No matter your scale, subject, or skill level, you're among fellow benchmates. Welcome to Beyond the Box Art, the Scale Modelers Podcast. Welcome to episode 36 of the show, and we're joined by Jamie Tranter from Hollow Crown Miniatures and Paul Regan, former IPMS UK president, introducing us to the wargaming side of the hobby. It's time to welcome your host, Brownie, alongside Boulders, Dan, Nevs and Shane, collectively responsible for several hours of nonsense and countless unnecessary purchases.
Hello Benchmates, and welcome to episode 36 of Beyond the Box Art. This time round we're heading beyond the familiar territory of kits, paint and plastic, and taking a proper look at another branch of the hobby tree, wargaming. Later in the show we'll be joined by Jamie Tranter from Hollow Crown Miniatures and Paul Regan for a conversation that takes us from historical battlefields to the much darker worlds of fantasy and grimdark. And there's a particularly important reason we wanted to have this conversation. For many younger hobbyists, wargaming, fantasy miniatures and grimdark are increasingly becoming the gateway into painting, modelling and collecting. They may not begin by building an aircraft, tank or ship, but they're learning exactly the same skills: construction, painting, weathering, research, creativity and storytelling. If we want the wider modelling hobby to continue growing, then understanding these different entry points is incredibly important. Rather than asking why young people aren't necessarily coming into the hobby in the same way previously generations did, perhaps we should be looking at where they're coming in and making sure there's a path for them to discover everything else the hobby has to offer. So hopefully, whether they're already a wargamer or have never rolled a dice in anger, we're all going to learn a little more about this side of the hobby and why it should be so important in bringing the next generation of modelers through the door. And of course, episode 36 wouldn't be complete without another trip into the financially hazardous territory of the Stash Inflation Report, as the team uncover yet more completely essential releases that none of us realised we desperately needed. Plus, we are joined by Matty T, our new automotive expert. So, for those that have been saying we haven't catered for your side of the hobby, hopefully we now have that covered. So, this is episode 36 of Beyond the Box Art, and it starts now. So, for episode 36, I am joined by Nevs.
Hello there, everybody.
Dan.
Hello, Benchmates.
Shane.
How's it going, Benchmates?
Boulders.
Hello, Benchmates.
That wasn't very Scottish.
That's how you knew.
He just said in the preamble you're going to do it in Scottish and he forgets it already.
I know, but then you had a go at me for saying that. I go from like to the top, so I thought I'll just do it normal.
As you've got the mic, you might as well tell us about what you've got on your bench. And by the looks of it, you've actually used a bulldozer to get the stuff on there.
Yeah, I decided when I had a bit of time from doing other jobs that I wanted to do something with tracks. So I purchased earlier in the year, which was on the podcast back in February. I got the 1/16 M10 Achilles, and I have started that. A lot of prep work, drilling holes and that for additional panels and for inserting bits in. But to the minute, it's going together really, really nicely. The fit is tremendous, very Tamiya-esque, but I'm not looking forward to the tracks because there's 78 links aside I've got to do, and that includes everything. And they are workable.
Well, it'll give you something to do.
So I want some sort of natural sag, even though the Sherman chassis didn't really have that much of a sag, but you can still see they weren't super tight. I'm going to do the controversial where one of the tracks is the wrong way around. Because the British seem to do it to make them turn quicker, because apparently it was better to dig in and give them better traction. So that's what I'm going to do. If people go, well, that's not correct, sorry, but I've got plenty of books to say otherwise.
Okay, so the catenary sag that you're talking about is obviously how much the track actually dips down in between the wheels, etc. Is there a given distance for each one, or is it separate, or is it to the vehicle? How does that actually work?
I think it all depends on if it's been changed in the field or not.
Okay, so basically you've got to pre-tension them. And in the field, they didn't have the ability to do that, I'm guessing what you're saying.
Yeah, some of them did have a bit of a sag, or they did stretch, so there was a little bit of sag. Nothing like a panther or a tiger, because obviously they had quite a bit. So did the T-34 had quite a bit of a sag on their tracks, because they bored from the top idler wheels. So, yeah, I'm just going to play with it. There's plenty of tracks. There's 4 sprues, so it's everything shoehorns, track pads, and I'm looking forward to using the lock and load in anger, because that'll be great for doing some nice silver on the facing of the track pad. So I'm really looking forward to it. A lot of steps to do the wheels, so I'm debating whether to paint them all first and then put them together, or just to throw them together and then cheat using the AK interactive paint markers and paint the wheels, because they all move. So it's not like it's going to be that. So I might just do that.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it being finished.
Just jumping away from that at the moment, Dan, you have something to do with tanks as well at the moment.
Yes, mate, I do. The Moosaroo has come through, and I'm very relieved, I have to be honest, because my worst fears were going to be that it was going to be something post-war that went very fast and had wings on it, and I probably didn't know much about at all. So when it was an armoured vehicle, I did pray and say thank you, because, yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's not my scale, I have to say. 72nd is definitely not my scale, as everybody knows, my beloved 148. I wouldn't get that lucky, would I? But, yeah, I can say what it is, can't I?
You can say what it is, and also the fact that somebody winds you up quite emphatically at the beginning to say that it actually was a post-war jet that you had to build.
No, first of all, you told me it was a frog kit.
Oh, yes, that was true.
In a bag. And my heart started to beat a little bit faster. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. But no, really happy. So it's the Mark V Centurion from Vespid Models, and you seemed quite surprised that I knew who they were, and I only know because one of our club members back about 6 months ago, he bought a couple of the Vespid kits, and up until then I had never heard of them, and we got the box open during the club meeting and we're all poring over the plastic, and the detail is absolutely fantastic. The mold quality, I'm not sure this boxing that we're getting, because obviously it's got to come from Canada and I haven't got the crib sheet that comes with it or anything yet. I'm not sure the exact boxing, but I do know that one of the boxings comes with some 3D, I think it's a 3D printed cover for the gun mantlet, and I think there's a metal barrel in there and a small photo etch. Well, in 72nd, it'll be a very small photo etch fret and even tinier photo etch parts on there. I've already been mulling over some ideas, and I think I'm going to do a Suez-based vehicle. I'm not going to say exactly what just yet, but that's going to be my line of thought with it.
Did they have Mark V's in Suez?
They did use the Mark V's in Suez, yes.
Because it's a Mark V 1-4 RTR British main battle tank you're getting.
Royal Tank Regiment, yeah. I think they're 6 Royal Tank Regiment in there, so I'll go with that. But as always, these would have been bronze green or deep bronze green out the factory, because they weren't NATO green then. They certainly weren't NATO.
No, definitely bronze green in the 50s, 60s.
It would have been bronze green and then repainted in desert yellow. What's the British? I don't know what the standard British desert colour was for that time, for the 50s into the 60s. I think it's desert yellow. In any case, that's what it's going to probably go with. There's loads of really, really cool photos. And as I've always said, I don't know much about the Suez Crisis. So again, modelling is an educational tool for me. So putting this little tank together is going to send me on a bit of a history lesson, and I'm going to try and dig in and learn about the Suez Crisis and all the sort of how I know where it is and I know roughly what happened. And there was an episode of The Crown that we watched because my missus was obsessed with the fact that we have a royal family. Obviously, she's not British, so she thinks it's quite funny and quite fascinating at the same time that we have a royal family. And she got into The Crown. I didn't think I'd like that series, and I have to say it was very well made, and they've done a great job of it. And one of the episodes in it, I think it's the beginning of one of the series, they cover the Suez Crisis, because I believe that was what done for Anthony Eden, wasn't it? So apart from that, I don't know much, but looking at photos, the kit that the guys are using, I can see the evolution into the 60s and 70s British Army kit, which of course is all very apt to my Land Rover that I've got, because I don't know if they were using Luxburr radios then, but I've got Klansman's in the back of the Land Rover. I've got an SLR in there. So there's a lot of crossover of that period of kit and equipment that's coming through. Only problem is, on doing that research, I'm now looking for that period in 72nd scale British Army figures, and there is zilch as far as I can see, unless anybody can give me some suggestions.
3D Gizmo.
Yeah. So that would be DMS boots or leather-soled boots with putties, and some are lightweight trousers, probably 58. No, they wouldn't be wearing 58, but it'd still be 37 pattern webbing stuff, wouldn't it? 37 left over.
37 pattern in the 6, yeah. The 58 didn't come until 70s, I think.
Yeah, it takes a long time to come through. And then quite large berets, radio gear, obviously shirt sleeves as well. They would be wearing, a lot of them had shirt sleeves because it was quite hot. If I do that, I don't know if I'm going to do a patrol sort of alongside of the tank or not, but I have seen a really cool photo of one dismounting HMS Puncher. Would it be HMS Puncher?
Sounds about right.
Landing craft ship or something like that. But yeah, Journey of Discovery, and that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do the Suez one.
Okay, so I'm completely ignorant to that side of the armour history. I know during the Suez Crisis, the RAF, the French, and I think there was another nationality that had yellow and black stripes, almost sort of D-Day type stripes painted on the aircraft. Did the vehicles have identifying marks on them?
They had on the top of the from what I can see on top of the turret and sort of the gun mantlet bit, there is 2 white, quite crudely painted crosses.
Okay.
Whether they're just unit markings or they are, the fact that they've been painted on top, it might be we're here sort of markings, you know?
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. This is all what I need to dig into. I'm probably going to do it in some sort of box diorama, probably with some lighting. Tempted to do another ammo box diorama, but again, being 72nd scale, finding an ammo box or a British Army box that's suitable for that size. The other thing is as well, is I don't really want to cut up militaria that's that old now, because that stuff is starting to get hard to find and obviously has a historic value in and of itself. And a few box dioramas have always told me, a few box diorama builders, I should say, have always said to me, don't build the diorama to the box, build the box to the diorama that you want to build. If that makes sense. Don't try and squeeze your idea into a small space. You have to, if that's how big the box diorama dictates in depth and size and the open window of it, then that's how big your diorama has to be. Looks like I've got some scratch building ahead of me as well.
And then you'll get the script from Canada who says in the box you've got to turn it into a flower pot of petunias.
Probably, yeah. Which this might all be all boy pie in the sky until that crib sheet comes through. But that's my initial idea. But I tell you what, even if it's not that and we have to do something else, it's still a diorama that I'd like to try. Probably then in 135th, because I know that a AFV club do a decent Centurion, I think, in 135th.
35th they do.
Yeah, they do it in 35th, and they do the Mark. I think they do the Mark 5 as well. They did use these in Vietnam as well, didn't they?
Australians 5-1.
That's it. That's what I saw.
There was a famous one, which I'm not going to, because if kids are listening to this, there is a famous Australian Centurion Mark 5-1 which had the big massive spotlight on it, and it's called Something Eater.
Ah, okay.
That is a famous one from the Australians. But I've just been looking at some of the stuff I've got on my laptop for Centurions. A lot of them seem to have had the code H from the gun mantlet cover up to the tank commander's hatch. So that was obviously to possibly see from the sky. But then I've also found that not all the Centurions were in desert sand. They were in a mixture of desert sand and bronze green. And it's not actually desert sand. I've just looked at some notes I've got. It is light stone.
Light stone. Right. Okay. Okay.
And I'm sure, if I remember correctly, MRP, and I know you don't use MRP, I'm sure they do British tank colours, and I'm sure all light stones in that set.
I'll be honest with you, Mike. I'm happy to use MRP, and I have some in the collection. The only problem is, I won't go into details, but the shop that I usually buy it from has disappeared.
He's gone.
Yeah. So
that shop in question has gone completely.
yeah. I mean, let's not go into that now because that's their business. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've switched to obviously using Scott and the SMS stuff, purely because of value as well, because what the SMS paint is per bottle, the cost, the milliliters that's in there is actually, when you work it out, really good value. And because it's nice and thin and you can spray it at 15 psi pretty much from the bottle, you don't actually need that much of it. So a bottle lasts quite a long time. And on a 72nd scale tank, that's like 1/2 of a pipette tip in the airbrush. So yeah, there's some ideas that I've been floating around. And then shall I go into what I've got in the bench as well?
You might as well.
Right. Okay. So I attended the Duxford show with the guys from IPMS, and it was a bit of a hybrid posse of us that were there. And the next one we're going to is the Battle of Britain Day. So we've been tasked to take some Battle of Britain related stuff. And as everybody knows, I don't usually build Spitfires apart from the one that I built recently, which was Don Gentile's, and that's a Eagle Squadron one. So I've pulled out the stash, the little Tamiya 148 Austin Tilley that I'm going to do in RAF colours. Fantastic. Brilliant. Apparently, the RAF didn't actually use Austin Tilleys in this grey. So this is going to be a what if. It's painted now, so that's going to be a what if. And if anybody says anything, it's my model, and I wanted to paint it that way. And if you don't like it, there's the door.
Oh, dear.
And I've also, because I know we're going to be talking about figures in a little while, I haven't painted a figure for quite a while, and I really, really enjoy it every time I do. Only because I've done quite a few now, and I'm getting to a relatively happy standard where I can look at a figure and say I'm really happy with that. I quite enjoy it. Still room for improvement, but they're at a stage and they don't look like if they've been dipped in a bucket of Dulux. So I've ordered an RAF rider. He's sitting in his print frame at the moment. He's got the scaffolding around him. He's an RAF rider who's riding an old, could be an Ariel or could be a Royal Enfield, beautiful old twin cylinder motorbike with lovely flat handlebars and a bicycle saddle seat.
It wouldn't have been old at the time.
No, it would have been the latest gear. And here, the company have printed both lots. The back lot, ignore them, but don't ignore them. They are US bomber crew figures in 1/32nd scale. And in front of them, on the same plate, is 2 standing RAF figures with their life jackets on and their boots, and one of them smoking a cigarette, and they just look awesome. So can't wait to paint those. And also, finally, it cooled down enough for me to get a coat of matte on Piccadilly Lily here, which is my 148 B17.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
So there she is. I've still managed to do it with the wings separate because you can't fit the whole lot in the spray booth. But yeah, we're getting somewhere with it now.
How did you find the decals?
Do you know what? Absolutely fine. I don't know what all the blimmin' fuss is about with Edward decals. Absolutely fine.
Did you get the film off?
You don't need to peel that film off. Don't need to do that. But don't forget, I use lacquer clear coats, so that they went down over them absolutely beautifully, and you cannot see it. You just can't see it. The only thing I did do was trim around the decals on the sheet, so where the square D is on the tail, I trimmed right up to the edge of it with a scalpel to leave
there.
as little as possible, and around the big A on there. Obviously, the serial number on the back you can cut individually if you want. There is decal film there, but unless you literally got it right up to your face, you can't see it. You just can't see it.
Well, there's that old trick that we was told as well regarding the lighter fluid. If you put the lighter fluid around it, it just dissolves it away.
Yeah, I didn't really want to risk it because I want this done, and I didn't want another disheartening experience of going, oh, I've effed that up. That's going back in the box and back on the shelf now for a while.
You could always try it on a paint mule.
Yeah, just try it on a paint mule.
I could. Saying that, the decal sheet that you get with this bloody 100th boxing, there's about 4 pages of it, and they're A3.
Oh, there's tons of decals in the box.
You just get so many. I wish I'd have bought it when it come out. I wish I'd have bought Overtrees for it, because there ain't none of them left now. If you go to, I did have a look at this year's Telford and said to the guy, I don't suppose you got any B17 Overtrees, and he looked at me and was like, no, mate. So anyway,
Just holding it up there, you're talking about the decals. Is the star and bar supposed to be that way up?
which way up?
He's winding you up, Dan.
I should know better by now, shouldn't I? I didn't buy it. There we go.
Nearly.
Just reverting back to the Centurion SMS Do BSC number 61, but it is a World War II because, to be honest, there wasn't that much different time frame. There's only 7 or 8 years. Was it 56? Was it fit? Is it
9? Yeah, 9 years. Oh, 11 years.
Yeah. They would have still been using that stock and that recipe, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So there's PL 144 British Lightstone. So they do it, and they also do Portland stone as well. So if you want to do a few light and dirties, then you could use the Portland to bleach it.
Yeah. The other thing I may do, I think all of us are going to be doing, is tapping up the 172nd guru, Mr. Alex Clark, because I think we need to get him on and have a little chat about building this scale, because this is going to be a bit of a new experience. I didn't do 72nd vehicles as a kid. I didn't do any of that. So
I did the Matchbox Challenger and stuff like that from Revell. I did quite a few because when I was in the cadets, we used to have to do a diorama, and it was always a 72nd military vehicle.
Really? Yeah. They are good. I mean, imagine these. Have you built one of these Vespid kits?
I've seen one built. The Lincoln Length tracks on it, I think, is genius because a lot of people generally just give you rubber band tracks, and I don't think they look right on that. It just makes it look toy-like, but because of the Lincoln Length, they do look better, a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't bad on the Airfix Mark 1. Is it the Mark 1? The First World War tank that come with the rubber bands that went all the way round and were exposed. And they weren't too bad.
No, I just think it depends on what the tank is. And if I remember correctly as well, the Vespid Centurion, it depends, because I think they did 2 boxings. If it's a deluxe version, it comes with a 3D printed gun mantlet.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Like a pinky peachy colour. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a pinky peachy colour. So you get the gun mantlet, you get the barrel, you get photo etch, and then the decal sheet. There's enough there to 7 or 8 vehicles.
Just imagine opening that up as a kid when you built them. That would have absolutely blown your mind, that quality, wasn't it? As I said the other day, we've never had it so good in this hobby. There is so much choice for whatever your budget and so much quality in a box containing a model kit now. If you choose right and you know the game, if you've been in a little while, if you're totally new to it, then, as we're probably going to talk about, most kids getting into this are not building what we're building, let's face it. But
yeah, because I think Vespid as well did the Challenger and not the latest Challenger. I'm on about the Second World War. I think it's is it the A30 Challenger?
Yeah.
The tank destroyer. They did that in 35th. Now I built one that was really difficult build, and I mean a difficult build. Every panel was bent like a banana, and it put me off. And then when the Vespid one came out, I got it and built it, and I absolutely loved it. But the 72nd ones I've not done. I'm sure they did a Comet as well.
Yeah, they have.
An A34 Comet.
it's not my scale, mate. So I'm in 48 land, so it's not really that I...
Listen, you might turn and do 72nd, because then, one, it's less space, because if you're only doing a vignette...
Yeah, but that 48 Achilles that I did was like about as big as a postcard in footprint, less than that. So it's a bit different to the 16th one you're doing. That's like a cinder block, isn't it?
That's having a lot of stuff put on it. It's having the
Yeah, you've got to go nuts. Value gear. The value gear do 1/16 stuff for that.
they do Soul Kit do it as well. 3D Gizmo do 16 scale stuff. So that's having a lot of storage on its sandbags. It's having the hedge trimmer on the front, the hedgehog thing. That's going to have that on it. I'm going to cake it in mud, dust, bits of twigs and everything else because it's Norman. Not doing a Normandy one.
Are you going to paint it in? Are you going to attempt the Mickey Mouse camo scheme?
Yeah, I've done the Mickey Mouse camo scheme before.
Oh, you've done it. Oh, cool. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. The easiest way to do that is to use a compass with a blade on it, spin round your masking tape, just put loads of Mickey Mouse dots all over the place so that it dingies round, and then you just mask over the top of that to fill your infill area, and then just go over.
Are they black and green or brown and green?
Black. It's an odd shade of black. It's like a blue black that they used, and then obviously green over the top. I just wish they'd do aftermarket decals for it. This is the one thing that, it's 16th scale. You've just got the decals out the box, and it's just...
If anybody's doing a 35th one and you want something different, I would suggest Star Decals. They do some really cool bits and pieces. But yeah, 16th.
I've had a look. They haven't done 16th yet, and I just think it's one of them. 30th, everybody last us. Because 16th scale was a bit of a niche market 10 years ago.
It's not my thing, if I'm honest with you. It just doesn't grab me.
There was only Trump that did it with like T34. Hobby Boss did the Tiger 1 in 16 scale, which, believe it or not, was an actual remote control just as a plastic kit. So to make the tracks, you had to hammer in pins to do the track, which you couldn't do that with your thumbs because you'd have no thumbs left because it just looked like a pub dartboard. So then they brought out the King Tiger full interior, Panther full interior, Panzer Fours, and then they've obviously seen these being built and then gone, let's dibble in the market. And then everything else is history. Tacom do it, Das Work do it. There's other companies now that are jumping on the 16th scale. It's just...
So how are you finding where you've built it up to so far?
Really enjoyable. Because the problem with 35th scale is if you've got to take a little part off to put like a gas filler cap on the engine deck or anything else like that, and you go to put it on, and it pings off your tweezers. You're like, bye, ta-da. And then you get disarmed. With these, because they're that bigger, you can actually put them in with your fingers and actually get them into position. So in that aspect, it's a hell of a lot easier to go together. Let's say there's tons of sprues. There's 20 sprues, and they're not small. They're all the size of bigger than an A4 sheet of paper. So you've got 24 sprues, basically. But it might be done for Telford.
Which year?
This year, you cheeky monkey.
Are you going to grace the stand with it? Blimey. There you go.
Yeah, because the Bolton stand is obviously carrying on the theme of the Tamiya 80th anniversary. So we'll be celebrating Tamiya on that aspect. So, yeah, there'll be a couple of things making an appearance. That'll definitely make an appearance, possibly on the box art stand. And then the other one, I don't know where it's going to go yet because it all depends on how good the paint finishes.
Cool. Okay, moving on then. What you got on the bench?
Well, not had very much on the bench since the last recording because, like I told you, chaps, I was doing the Tamiya Zero, and the pilot went missing. So that puts a proper dampener on because I'm not doing another one, and I spent a week looking for it, and then I thought, right, in that case, I'll get another pilot and started rushing that, so I wasn't impressed. And then opened the laptop to do this recording, and guess where I found him?
Wedged between the hinge.
The laptop monster.
Because I think he'd been held in by like his arm, so he's not crushed or anything. He just had a tiny little bit of paint off the back that had gone, so he's very rescuable.
Poor bugger's been starving for 2 weeks. He's not eaten because his hand's been trapped.
Yeah.
That film, 27 Hours, has got nothing on that poor pilot being stuck in between a laptop.
Sandwiched in a laptop.
So needless to say, he's back on the bench. The Sake engine is done. Some of the cockpit just needs a little bit of touching up. But to be honest, I'm gonna go over it with panel liner anyway. just to bring out some of the details. And with the pilot being in there, the attention will just focus more on the pilot than on instruments and things like that. That should be done pretty soon. I did put a little coat of paint on Scharnhorst and Nassau. I've done their lower hulls. Like I said, they use the same paint chips between the wars, so it's the same colour for both. That just now needs a satin varnish just to fix it in. So yeah, very little until this evening, where I found Mr. Pilot over here. Not much has been achieved.
Okay, and what have you been spending your cash on then?
I spent a little bit on the Javelin sale, obviously for the business, and partly for myself. So I got the Airfix B24D, which I've been after for a while. I don't know if it'll have the cockpit glazing problem with the wrong one in, because they said that some boxes shouldn't.
Okay.
So we'll find. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a long time before I crack the lid on that.
Well, Dan's your expert.
Yeah, they'll send you out a sprue, mate. Just contact them and they'll send you probably all of the glazing set. They just stick it in a bag and send it out to you.
I've got the Academy one to build alongside it. I want to do what I call the Snow White Squadron, which were based in North Africa and did the Poesti raids. I do like the desert camouflage on the B24, I must say. But when I get round to it, I will do it in that camo. But that's it in terms of models. Just the B24. I did get some dry transfers. I don't know how dry transfers will work in terms of the lettering for things like the Zero, because I'm doing them all for 601 Cockatoo. It makes sense that the lettering stays consistent across all of the aircraft. So it is a bit of a brighter yellow. It's like a lemon yellow, brighter than I like, but if they work, so I'll use those.
If you're having difficulty with it, you could always put the dry lettering onto some clear decal film rather than putting it straight onto the model.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of it as an issue, especially on that scale.
I mean, the Hasegawa Zero, which I've got there and I'm tempted to crack open as well, that has a lot of numbers ready to go. It couldn't do an entire squadron's worth, could it? But it could do like about three aircraft just from that box. And obviously the slightly larger aircraft like the B7Ns, their lettering might have been bigger, but there is room for flexibility as long as all the zeros are consistent. So we'll wait and see.
Okay. Is that you?
That's me.
Fantastic. Shane, you're looking like you're actually sort of fully refreshed after your holiday. You seem to be blending into your Arsenal shirt quite well. That shade of red.
Yeah, 2 weeks away. It's been lovely spending time with the kids and obviously the wife. Yes, loads of time on the beach. It's been brilliant. And for those that didn't listen to the last episodes, I've just been to the Isle of Wight for 2 weeks. And we did manage to visit a few shops whilst we were there.
How much did you spend?
Managed to get around 4 different model shops on the island. And I'll come on to it then. We picked up 3, I picked up 3 models for the kids. Jacob had 2 and Edward picked up 1, which is already built. How much do you think for 3 Gundam models?
Knowing you, probably a couple of hundred.
Nowhere near.
No, I'd say about 80 quid.
I'd say 100.
I'm going to put you out your misery. And I will frame it in Kevin's words from upstairs, downstairs, who can I just say are an amazing model shop and the service is top notch. Kevin said a measly £19 that will be. So for £19, I picked up 3 Gundam models after having a really lovely chat with Kevin, who's, like I say, him and Max are top guys. They told me they've been stocking Gundams for a good few months now, and it's a very popular line to the business, which is really good news for me to hear, as you know. So yeah, that's what we've been spending the money on. Obviously, an ice cream, but we've been working on a couple of little projects whilst we've been on holiday. I took with me my metal frame V-Tiger new Gundam, which I'll put some pictures on the Benchmates page as well. But like most Gundams, it's all pre-painted. But this thing is pretty mean, actually. Really enjoyable build. I say the full metal frame. It's got some weight to it as well. But colours. I sent you boys some pictures of the backpack and the booster rifle just before we started the recording. And there's a lot of colours, a lot of sprues. I think there was 29 sprues in this box, but they're not all A4 size like McBoulders. But yeah, it's been a really enjoyable build for the 2 weeks whilst I've been away, and I only needed to take a pair of nippers and a blade and some sanding sticks. Yeah, jobs are good in. a very enjoyable holiday. We're literally just back now, straight onto the podcast. And yeah, that's it, to fill you all in on our travels.
As it should be. I must admit, I've been really mean whilst you've been chatting away. I've shared an image from the TV series Little Britain of the Dennis Waterman character holding an absolutely massive ice cream. The story of scale.
The story of scale, yeah, there you go. I'm surprised that came from you and not Nev's, actually.
It's catching on.
But yeah, anyway, that's me.
You didn't ask what I spent money on?
Yeah, I know, we haven't got that long. We've got a guest waiting to come on the show. Go on then, what have you spent?
Well, you know what I've spent.
Yeah, I know I do, but the average audience doesn't.
I've had a flight of Hunters land this morning, and half of that isn't for me.
Which Hunter's this then?
The new T7.
From?
Revell.
Very nice.
Which you will have 3 delivered to your door on Friday when you're home from work.
Fantastic.
So they're actually still in the Revell case. They've not even been opened. So they'll come straight across. Detailing is absolutely stunning.
Not bad for a 27-year-old kit.
Oh, to be honest, I think the twins survived very well considering how long it's been since it was tooled. And now it's in the dark grey plastic. It looks better. It looks better than that light grey.
Okay.
It's impressive, and I think it's really, really, really good value for money. And what I didn't know you got inside is that you get the ejector pull handles for the ejector seat in 3D print.
Yes, there was a little story behind that. Luke told me down at the Avon show. They may have forgotten to put that onto the sprues, hence why they've put them in as a 3D print rather than to try and modify the sprues.
I think it's better as a 3D print because they're a lot thinner than would be on the normal kit injection, because I've got Hunters coming at my ears in 30 seconds.
Yeah. But what colour SKUs do you get in the box?
So you get, give me an Unus Momentus, because I've actually got the instruction manual here. So you get the Hunter T7 XL591 from 208 Squadron, which is a full wraparound, which, if I remember correctly, that was the same airframe that was at RAF Finningley for the Silver Jubilee.
Yes.
Which was in red, white and grey scheme at the time.
4 FTS.
Yep. Then obviously you get the 92 Squadron Blue Diamonds, which has got a accreditation to Mr. Paul Pemberton Brown. I don't know who he is.
Who's that?
Yep. Luckily enough, I've still got my Fisher Models Hunter T7 conversion, so I've got a bit of extra decal schemes, so I could possibly do a 74. And there's a couple of others in there. The one from 4FTS, which has got the white spine with red fuel tanks. But I fancy doing the Embraer chase plane, and I've got somebody who's working on a mask set as we speak.
In the Embraer, or the current scheme it's flying in, which was the hybrid Embraer with RAF roundels and serial?
The hybrid.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Hawker Hunter Aviation.
With a couple of camouflage fuel tanks on it to really...
Of course.
Make it that bit special. But the detail on the cockpit floor is absolutely sublime.
Brilliant.
Absolutely sublime. Raised rivets on the bulkhead. You do get, however, a single seat canopy in the box.
That's novel.
Because the landing lights
are on that sprue.
So instead of just nipping it off and keeping the single, so basically those that have got Hunters that need a new canopy going to be made up because there's one free in the box.
Oh, well. Apart from that, anything else you've been spending your cash on?
Oh, yes. I bought the other half a model of Bo-Katan from Mandalorian yesterday. So she's massively into Star Wars. And to be honest, for the money, even though they're a bit like Gundam from a company called Blockies, they're absolutely superb. The Mandalorian one she's got with Grogu is ace. The Vader one is absolutely superb. Could do with a little bit of an LED light in the lightsaber to make that glow red. But for the money, I think they range from 20 to 25 quid. But the cracking value for money.
Fantastic. Okay, well, with that, we'll take a short break and we shall come back with the Stash Inflation Report.
Beyond the Box Art is proudly supported by Guideline Publications, Ammo by Mig Jimenez, the Scale Modelers Supply and Fishcop Model Company. Their backing helps keep the show running, so we can encourage you to support deserving modelling charities instead.
Fishcop Models, elevating scale modeling to an art form. Experience highly detailed 3D printed upgrade parts that bring true authenticity to your builds. Creators of the acclaimed Rolls-Royce Merlin engine set for both the Kotare Spitfire and the Dambusters set for the Border Models Avro Lancaster. For bespoke design and printing, our service is as precise as it is personal, all at a reasonable price. Please take a look at our products on www.fishcopcompany.de. Shipping is available for all of our products worldwide.
The bank balance is nervous, the shelves are full, and temptation is everywhere. Welcome back to another dangerously persuasive Stash Inflation Report.
It's time to open the hangar doors and hide the bank cards as I bring you the latest aircraft releases in this episode's Stash Inflation Report. Kinetic have announced another addition to its 1-48 scale Starfighter family, and you certainly won't lose this one on the display shelf. This is the F104S Italian Racing Red, or for those that know the particular brand, it's Cosa Rosa. Finished in this absolutely unmistakable bright red Italian scheme, if natural metal and camouflage are becoming a little too sensible, this should provide a suitable colourful alternative. Price and release date are still to be announced. From a checker prints comes something rather unusual, a highly detailed TBM 700. This 3D printed kit will be available in 32nd scale, 35th scale and 1-48 scale. But sadly, for the gentleman scale contingent, there are no current plans for the 72nd scale version. The digital model reportedly contains around 5,000 individual objects and 65.5 million polygons, for those that are really interested, so they certainly haven't skimped on the design work. It will include an open door option, access ladder, and complete door and wing assembly. Pricing and release details remain to be confirmed. Thigh Molds have now announced Japanese shipping dates for the two new 1-72nd F4G Wild Weasel boxings. The versions listed as Coastal War is due to be shipped on the 4th of September, with deliveries beginning from the 7th. The Sea Camouflage Limited Edition falls on the 11th of September, with the arrivals expected from the 14th. Both represent the long-awaited Wild Weasel member of the Thigh Molds Phantom family and feature a newly moulded lower fuselage to reproduce the aircraft's distinctive underside accuracy. Lake scale models have revealed that work is underway on the first 72nd scale project, the Hawker Siddeley HS-121 Trident 1C. The principal airframe components have already been completed, and the attention is now turned to the cockpit, undercarriage and engine nacelles. There's no price or release date just yet, but a newly tooled Trident in 1-72nd should certainly interest airline builders and require a reasonably substantial shelf. Meanwhile, Hobby 2000 have several releases heading our way. In 1-48 scale, we have the Harrier GR5 and the Douglas A4E/F Skyhawk. Moving down to the 72nd scale with the two high-speed Junkers variants, the JU-88S1 and the JU-88S3. Prices and release dates are still to be confirmed, but that's 4 more opportunities to buy familiar plastic in some potential interestingly new boxings. Armour Hobby is returning to the early war Curtis family with the 72nd Curtis H75A1 and A2. Marking choices and release details are still to come, but given Armour's previous fighter kit, this will undoubtedly be the centre of attention from 1-72nd scale builders. Edward is also prepping a 48th Douglas A20G Havoc in cooperation with HK Models under the new HKM branding. This is the solid nose attack version armed with 6 forward firing half-inch machine guns, because sometimes subtlety is overrated. Expect Edward's usual selection of enhancements to accompany the HKM plastic. KP have announced another substantial batch of 72nd scale releases. First off is the MiG-21 F-13 Fishbed E, supplied with 3D printed parts and paint masks. This is joined by the Cessna T-50 Bobcat and the JRC-1, and the Cessna Crane Mark 1A and the UC-78. The Gosling Mark 1 and Widgeon and finally down to the Guillotine D510. Each of those boxes will also include paint masks, making life slightly easier for anyone who prefers building models to cutting tiny little pieces of masking tape. Finally, Micromedia is re-releasing the wonderfully unconventional Blériot 125 in 72nd scale. It's one of those glorious, eccentric French aircraft designs that looks as though several different ideas arrived at the drawing office simultaneously and nobody had the heart to reject any of them. If you missed it first time round, another opportunity is on its way. And that's everything from the aviation desk this time. Your bound balance may have survived the aircraft releases, but don't just relax just yet, because Dan is waiting with the latest armour-shaped ways to flatten it. Over to you, Dan.
Time to swap wings for tracks and get stuck into the latest armour releases. This week we've got a bit of everything. Something shiny, something heavily armed, and 11 Germans apparently having a well-earned sit-down. First up, Border models with something a little different. They're releasing a Leopard 2A7 Chroma series in 1/35 scale. It's kit number BG001. Now this is a pre-painted version and it comes with pre-painted photo etch, a metal barrel and fabric parts included in the box, so potentially a very impressive Leopard without quite as much time spent staring at the paint rack, wondering which shade of NATO green you actually need. Price is still to be announced with release expected in October. Next up, AFV Club are bringing us the IDF M1045A1 OREV Humvee TOW missile carrier, that's a mouthful, in 1/35 scale, kit number AF35359. It's an Israeli Defense Force version of the familiar Humvee, but this one comes equipped with the TOW anti-tank missile system, so considerably less school run and considerably more please don't park your tank over there. No confirmed price or release date on this one yet, but it's certainly one to keep an eye out for if modern IDF subjects are your thing. And finally this week, something for the diorama builders from Dynamo Models. Their new German infantryman at rest 1939 to 1942 full set gives you no fewer than 11 figures in 1/35 scale. The figures have been sculpted by Greg Girault and are produced in 3D printed light grey resin, with the full collection coming under kit number DYM Big Set 5. As the name suggests, these aren't 11 blokes charging heroically across a battlefield. They're German infantrymen taking a breather, which should make them practically useful for those quieter, more natural diorama scenes. The complete 11 figures there is priced at €160, and that's your armour stash suitably inflated for another fortnight. Try not to buy all 11 figures just because one of them looks like he'd fit perfectly beside that half-built Panzer you've had on the shelf since 2019. Right, from tracks to something considerably wetter. Nevs, what's floating our way this week?
Thanks, Dan. Right then, Benchmates. Welcome back to the wetter side of the Stash Inflation Report, where this fortnight we've got Japanese carriers, American battleships, and enough submarines to make the North Atlantic look distinctly more nervous. Starting in Japan, Bunker Studio are releasing a 3D upgrade set for the 1/700 scale Japanese aircraft carrier Hiya. This will include the main masts. These should be high detail and very noticeable improvements for your 1/700 scale Hiya. And always with bunker model. If you want them, get them fast. Fujimi are re-releasing their IJM carriers in 1/700. The Akagi and Kaga are back, this time coming with wooden deck upgrades and photo etch parts as standard in the box. Both are available in full hull configuration, with the Akagi also releasing in waterline with a plastic seascape base. On the topic of Japanese naval subjects making a comeback, Hasegawa are re-releasing their 700 scale battleship Issei as she appeared following her hybrid carrier conversion. In a bid to replace the IJN's carrier aviation following Midway, Issei and her sister ship Hyuga lost their 5th and 6th 14-inch turrets in exchange for flight decks and rotating catapults. Issei replaced her captain too, taking on Hase Shinzaburo, and in this configuration she could carry between 22 and 24 aircraft, including adapted D4Y Judy and E-16A Jake float planes. This boxing will be a full hull release, which is rare for Hasegawa in this scale, together with a wooden display stand and photo etch. Triumph model are working on the USS Arizona again in 1-700. This will be a plastic injection kit with 3D parts and photo etch upgrades, including the railings and fire control directors. Now this is definitely one to keep an eye on, and with the speed at which Triumph model are releasing kits these days, I wouldn't be surprised if we can see the Arizona in time for the 85th anniversary of Pearl Harbor this December. V Hobby are releasing the USS Iowa in 1-700 scale. A companion to their earlier USS New Jersey release, this depicts the Iowa in waterline configuration during the Second World War. The kit will be available in 2 boxings, a standard offering with just the plastic parts, and a deluxe edition with photo etch and brass gun barrels. Release is expected in September 2026, so Iowa fans, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Moving on to 350th scale, Triumph model are certainly keeping busy, working on the Imperial Japanese Navy destroyer Suzutsuki. This will be a full hull release of the Akizuki class anti-aircraft warship, which accompanied the Yamato on her fateful mission in 1945. While we currently only have a rendering of the ship, Triumph are hopeful for a release by the end of the year. With the powerhouse pace they are giving to other releases, it certainly feels like this is a ship we will be seeing in 2026. OKB Grigorov are releasing a slew of submarines in 1-350 and 1-144 scales. Starting with the Permit class US Navy nuclear attack submarines, which served from the 1960s through to the 1990s. This will be in 1-350th scale and made of 7 parts. One of the Permit class's Cold War adversaries will be represented in the Project 945, NATO callsign Sierra 1, Soviet attack submarine, again in 1-350 scale and coming with 6 parts. The Project 945 will not be shipping alone either, as the Victor II submarine, Project 671RT, is also releasing in this scale. This kit will be made of 9 parts and depict the class when they were fitted with 2 screws. Next up is the 144th scale Naken class from the Swedish Navy. These were diesel-powered attack subs, which served from the 1980s to the early 2000s. This will be a more sophisticated build with a total of 36 parts, and will depict the class before their upgrade, with the Air Independent Propulsion module in 1987. All of these kits are 3D printed in resin and can occasionally come with a small amount of photo etch details as well as a small display stand. So there we are, folks. Japanese carriers, American battleships, Cold War submarines, and enough aftermarket to ensure that nobody actually builds anything straight from the box. That's your nautical stash inflation report for this fortnight. And now, over to Shane for the Gunpla and Gundam releases.
Thanks, Nevs. Right then, Benchmates. If you thought the stash was already looking dangerously full, well, I'm afraid I've got another handful of reasons for you to completely ignore all available shelf space and financial planning. Let's get into the fortnight's Gunpla Sci-Fi Stash Inflation Report. And first up is from Shenzhou Model with the 2207Y MGX Gundam Unicorn 02 Banshee. That might sound familiar, but this one is the no LED version. So if you fancy all that wonderfully aggressive Banshee styling, but without having to illuminate your modelling room like Blackpool Seafront, this could be worth a look. It's due this August, and the really dangerous bit, it's priced at 20 quid. And at that price, Brownie will probably argue it doesn't technically count as spending money at all. Next, Imperial Kitchen. We have an upscaled 1100 RG Sazabi, this time clear colour version. Yes, Sazabi, bigger, clear, almost certainly destined to become one of those kits you tell yourself you're buying it because it will look fantastic displayed properly before it ends up in the stash for a couple of years. But at the moment, the price and release date are still to be confirmed, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Then we have Poseidon Model, with something a little different. A 1/72nd scale Crossbone Gundam model kit. And being at 1/72nd, perhaps we can finally convince Boulders that this technically belongs in the aviation section. Probably not. This one is currently expected in September, with a price of approximately £15. Again, worryingly affordable. Next up, Swighton Toys and their Mecha Dimension Series Flame Mail model kit. Certainly looks like one for anyone who likes their mecha with plenty of presents. The expected price for this one is £45, though at the moment this is another one where the release date remains to be confirmed, but definitely one to keep your eyes on. And finally, this time from me, we have Keeply and their Type 3 Kairu. Godzilla fans should know exactly where we're going with this one. It's essentially Mecha Godzilla with enough weaponry strapped to it to make health and safety start asking awkward questions. The expected price is another one around £20. Release date still to be confirmed. And that is your lot from the world of Gunpla and sci-fi this fortnight. But unfortunately, Benchmates, we're not finished just yet, because we have a brand new section joining the Stash Inflation Report. So, I'm pleased to welcome our newest contributor, Matty T. He'll be bringing us all the latest releases from the world of cars, motorbikes, and commercial vehicles. That's right, just when you thought you'd be covered in enough modelling genres to empty your bank account, we've found yet another way of getting our benchmates to part with their cash. Matty, welcome to the show. Great to have you aboard. Over to you.
Thanks, Shane. Hey builders, this is Matty from Matty's Custom Scale, and I'm thrilled to join the Beyond the Box Art podcast. And I'll be covering some of the new kits being released with 2, 4 or more wheels for you to get your glue-covered fingers onto, all part of the Stash Inflation Report. This week I'll cover some of the bigger vendors, so let's get into it. Tamiya are bringing back 3 versions of the Mini in 1/24 scale, the Cooper 1275S, the Cooper Racing, and the Austin Cooper 1275D Mark I. On 2 wheels, Tamiya have released the 1/6 Honda Dax ST70, 1/12 scale Honda RS1000 Endurance Racer, and the Yamaha RZV 500R, all looking nicely retro. Aoshima is rolling out a lot more 132 scale snap-together kits, probably to help bring new builders into the hobby, so you know what to fill the young ones' stockings with at Christmas. There was the Type 2 Volkswagen bus, EK9 Civic Type R, Integra DC2 Type R, even Ninonki's EK9 from Project D, all coming out the balance of 2026, so keep your eyes out for those. Their Ferrari 512BB, though, is already being shipped. Revell have released a couple of new 124 scale McLarens, the 750S and Sir Lewis's MP425. Italeri might be releasing a roadside recovery kit soon because their current new releases are Lanciers, including the much-loved Integrale in the Safari Edition and the sometimes appreciated Fulva Coupe in a 1.6 HF Finoni spec. What's very cool from Italeri is they're soon going to be releasing a 1/9 scale Vespa PX125-150, and that's with 100% new tooling, so I might get my hands on that. AMT might have released their most outrageous Mustang yet. It's an SM95, but it's in, wait for it, My Little Pony spec. Unfortunately, the 125 scale snap together has no extra horsepower included other than the decals. A few more releases include a 76 Ford F-150 short bed, the much-loved 91 Silverado SS454, a 72 Duster Sox & Martin Pro Stock spec, and the big old school Mack B61 ST truck. AMT also showcased some hot up-and-coming kits with all new tooling, the Hot Wheels Twin Mill Push Fit kit and the 55 Chevy Gasser Candy Striper. They're available in a standard kit version, but there's also an awesome retro packaged and coloured chrome-plated limited edition version. There was also a new Moon Eyes 29 Ford Hot Rod, 72 C10 Short Bed, 63 Le Mans convertible, and a couple of versions of the Dodge A100, the panel van and a Vision van. Vision van's got windows, basically a panel van with holes in it. The AMT craziness continues with the Twisted Metal ice cream truck, so if you've been playing old school games you know what that is, Home Alone's OK plumbing van, and a new glue together kit for the Speed Racer, which you might recall had a snap together kit. So grab a drink, clear your bench, and get to building. Now here's a few words from our sponsors, and we'll continue with Jamie and Paulie straight after.
Do you want cutting-edge detail for your kits? Then take a look at Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, run by USAF veteran Mike Reeves. With real-world aircraft experience as a crew chief, Mike knows exactly where accuracy counts. And today, he's bringing that knowledge to life with precision 3D printed parts. From seamless intakes and nozzles to dropped flaps, pods, pylons, and cockpit upgrades, Phase Hanger's prints capture the crisp edges and fine detail that limitations in injection molding just can't reproduce. From 1/72nd to 1/32nd scale, you'll find add-ons from Cold War classics to the latest frontline jets with frequent new additions to the product range. Every piece is designed by modelers, for modelers, and faithfully reproduced on state-of-the-art printers and shipped worldwide, and are ready to drop straight into your next build. With additions to the product line landing all the time, there's always something fresh to elevate your next build. Explore the full range at phasehanger.com and follow Phase Hanger on Facebook and Instagram for regular updates and inspiration. Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, authentic detail designed with a veteran's eye and available to modelers everywhere. Phase Hanger is a proud sponsor of the Beyond the Box Art podcast.
It's time for the Guideline Publications monthly magazine update with what's coming up in September.
Right, Benchmates, it's Guideline Publications time. And normally at this point we'd hand over to John Taberner to tell us all about what's inside the latest issue of Scale Aircraft Modelling, etc. Unfortunately, John wasn't available this month. Apparently he's far too busy applying milliput as makeup before disappearing off for the weekend. And I'm not entirely sure whether he was filling imperfections, rescribing lost facial detail, or simply attempting some fairly ambitious facial reconstruction. Either way, John is away. You've got me covering Scale Aircraft Modelling, or Dan will be along to take care of Military Model Craft International after. So let's have a rummage through the September 2026 edition of Scale Aircraft Modelling, Volume 48, Issue 7, which is in the newsagents now and available online. So this month you're getting the usual 100 pages of aircraft modelling, reference news and reviews. Taking pride of place on the cover is the Fairey Fulmar Mark II in 1/48, built from Edward's kit by, somewhat inconveniently, John Taberner. So apparently he did have time to build a Fulmar before beginning his Milliput beauty regime. John's build is followed later in the magazine by a substantial aircraft in profile feature on the Fulmar itself, again written by John, accompanied by scale plans and colour profiles from Sam Pearson. So if the fleet-air army is your thing, there's plenty here to get you stuck into. But before that, we head to Greece. Andres tackles Mirage Hobbies 148th PZL P-24F Greek fighter in Defender of the Greek Skies. And this isn't simply an out-of-the-box build. This model is extensively detailed with open panels, internal structure, additional work to the armament, and some serious scratch building going on. It's one of those articles where you start looking at the photographs and think, oh, I could do that, before reading exactly what was involved and quietly putting down the razor saw back in the drawer. Next, we're off to the Pacific with Colin flying Pickett and Wings' 148th HI D3A2 Val. The Wingsy kit comes with plenty of detail straight from the box, including etched brass, and Colin adds further 3D printed goodies along the way. If Japanese aviation is your area, this is certainly one worth having a look at. Then we change scale completely for Marco Rondili's 172nd Italeri AMX-T, the two-seat version of the Ghibelli, and from something relatively compact to something that most definitely isn't. Keith Peckover tackles the enormous Blackburn Beverley C1 in 172nd from Combat Models. Now there's a sentence containing both combat models and a Blackburn Beverley, so you already know this probably wasn't a relaxing weekend build. If obscure Cold War transports are your weakness, you're going to want to see this one. There's some proper nostalgia next from Ruggiero Ratu Mazak, revisiting the Matchbox 172nd Armstrong Whitworth Siskin Mark 3A. And I do like seeing these older kits getting some attention. We spend a lot of time talking about the latest all-singing, all-dancing releases, but there's still an enormous amount of enjoyment to be had from taking one of these classic kits and seeing what can be achieved with it. Move along into larger scale, Jamie Hago builds ICM's rather lovely 172nd Polycarpov I-153 Chekai. Then we're right back down the other end of the scale spectrum with Hugh Morgan's 1144th Academy Boeing P-8A Poseidon. And rounding out the main aircraft builds, Francisco Pagoli takes a look at the Lockheed TF-104GM Starfighter in Last of the Last. So you've got everything from interwar biplanes and the Fleet Air-Arm fighters through to modern maritime patrol aircraft and Cold War jets. For reference modelers, there's Paul Lucas with Part 2 of the Canberra Conundrums, 1949 to 1957, accompanied by colour profiles from Sam Pearson. So, Sam is available through the usual news trade, and print and digital subscription options are available directly through Guideline Publications. And of course, Guideline Publications are great supporters of Beyond the Box Art, so do please support the people who support the show. Right, that's sand taken care of. Hopefully John will have finished sanding his forehead and polishing his milliput for the next episode, and can return to doing this himself. Until then, I'm putting the aircraft firmly back in the hangar, because Dan has been let loose with the latest Military Model Craft International. Dan, over to you.
And if aircraft aren't your thing, and you prefer your modelling subjects rather more heavily armoured, our friends at Guideline Publications have got you covered there as well. The September issue of Military Model Craft International is out now in the newsagents and also available digitally online. And this month there's a cracking mixture of armour from the Second World War right through to the modern battlefield. We start with Rob Riviere and an on-the-bench conversion of the Demon Barber design BT-5 before Oscar Gunnar tackles one of the smaller German AFEs of the Second World War in Normandy Door Knocker. Moving into something considerably more modern, Stefan Zimanski takes a look at the T-90 or T-72BU in the Tsar's New Clothes, examining the story behind one of Russia's best-known modern tanks. There's also an armour in profile feature looking at the medium tank M3 in US Army service, while Hafe Lam heads to the Eastern Front with a veteran of the fighting in the summer of 1943 in the Eastern Front fire support. Then it's time for something a little different with At the Bench talking to Canadian modeller Harvey Lowe. And if tigers are your thing, and let's face it, for many benchmates they certainly are, Lucas or Ziek recreates an episode from the early history of the Tiger 1 in Tiger Training. Javier Redondo then gets to work on the AFV Club M36 Jackson in the appropriately titled Action Jackson. And rounding out the main builds, Max Lemire revisits a wonderfully distinctive piece of Iraq armour, the T-55 Enigma. Of course, there's plenty more besides, including news at the front with an in-depth look at some of the latest releases, Quartermaster's stores covering what's new and what's coming, and words and pictures with the latest military titles. So another packed issue of Military Modelcraft International from our friends and sponsors at Guideline Publications. The September issue is out now and available digitally and online.
And now, our featured interview. Conversations with the people shaping the hobby, from individual modelers to leading manufacturers, exploring every aspect of scale modelling together.
Now, if you're primarily a scale modeler, the world of wargaming and tabletop miniatures can sometimes look like a completely different hobby. There are armies instead of individual models, rules instead of rivet counting, and apparently after spending hours carefully painting everything, someone is actually allowed to pick up your models and move them. But scratch beneath the surface and the two hobbies have an enormous amount in common. Research, painting, weathering, modelling, storytelling, and inevitably buying considerably more than you'll ever realistically finish. And wargaming itself is an incredibly broad church. At one end you have historical gaming, recreating battles, armies and periods from the past with varying degrees of historical accuracy. At the other end you have fantasy worlds where only the limits are imagination, good game design and just how unpleasant you want your fictional universe to become. And somewhere deep in that particular darkness sits grimdark, a genre filled with brutal worlds, morally questionable characters, battle armour, monsters, warriors, and some absolutely spectacular opportunities for miniature painting and modelling. But there's another reason that this matters to us. Wargaming and fantasy miniatures can provide an incredibly important springboard into the wider modelling hobby, particularly for younger people. Someone who starts out painting a handful of gaming figures today might be building armour, aircraft, cars, ships or dioramas in a few years from now. But first we have to understand what attracted them into the hobby in the first place. The future of modelling probably isn't going to look exactly like its past, and that's not a bad thing. If grimdark, fantasy and tabletop gaming are helping a new generation discover brushes, paint, plastic and resin and the satisfaction of creating something with their own hands, then that is something that the whole hobby should be taking an interest in. So rather than looking at wargaming as something separate, hopefully today we can all learn a little about this side of the hobby, understand why it appeals to a younger audience and perhaps discover what traditional scale modelling can learn from it too. Joining us are Paul Regan, who's going to explore historical wargaming, fantasy and other aspects of the hobby, along with Jamie Tranter from Holocrown Miniatures. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Evening, Paul.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So, Paul, let's start with you. You've obviously got a bit of a grounding in this subject, which I'll hold my hand up wholeheartedly and say I have a very simple understanding of what it is. Perhaps you can just explain for the audience a little more detail what actually is involved in this side.
Well, that could take the next hour, couldn't it? I just want to echo a lot of what you just said, actually, Paul, as well. I think it's really important. I started modelling and wargaming pretty much together, about 70 odd. When I started building the odd Airfix kits and that sort of thing that I used to get in bags and getting the figures, maybe not even painting them. But I wanted something to do with them. And that was when me and some guys at school, we wrote little rules and we had battles. And frankly, we didn't really care. We were using ancient Romans, we're fighting World War II Germans. It didn't really matter. And that was kind of where we were. And as we grew older, we wrote little bits of rules. We all knew that an 88mm anti-aircraft gun was really good at shooting up tanks. And, it could kill anything you could bring at it. And we formalised it more as we got older, and then we discovered this actually is a hobby. We found books in libraries, which used to exist in those days. It's a sad thing that these days kids aren't exposed to it in the same way. But there would be a shelf in your local library with half a dozen wargaming books on it. There were some quite famous names in those days who wrote them. And we picked up on these, and we gradually got more involved. I ended up going to a thing called Northern Militaire, which was a show held in Manchester for many years, primarily a military modelling display with figures and so forth. But it had war games elements, so we went along from school. And I ended up joining a thing called MAFA, Miniature Armoured Fighting Vehicle Association, because they sold some little resin vehicles that I couldn't get from Airfix or Matchbox. That's a modelling society, suddenly I'm in there. Through that, I got involved in a modelling club, and then got involved with my local model shop, working as a Saturday job when I was sort of 17, 18. And gradually got more and more involved in this. You haven't mentioned it, but obviously I've been heavily involved in IPMS UK for many years, because basically I'll build and model anything I feel like, which jumps me from Grimdark to F-15 Eagles for a display at Duxford or whatever.
Have you finished those yet?
It's only a year since I said they were on the bench for you.
Exactly.
I'll be there next year, all being well. But yeah, it's, it is, to me, hobby. The hobby is scale modelling for me. And I don't really care whether people are building science fiction, fantasy miniatures in heroic scales that don't go with any of the normal ones that we use in modelling. Whether they're building Tamiya tanks, Edward aeroplanes, Gundam figures, don't care. Any of that to me is model making, and it's therefore should be welcome within the whole hobby. Hopefully you all know, because you've had me on before when I was talking as president about the society before I stood down. That was quite a passionate thing I'm involved in. Been traipsing around model shows on behalf of IPMS, and it's not at all uncommon for me to have a display of 28mm Space Wombles on the corner, which attracts as much attention as any number of Spitfires from the younger members of the audience. And that's what's triggered me to move on a little bit. And now I'm no longer IPMS president. The aim is to set up a little group and bring in people who are into this side of the hobby, because the remarkable thing I've found is how many scale modelers, as I would call it, the conventional guys who'll turn up with a Messerschmitt or a Spitfire or a tank or whatever, you collar them, they'll actually admit that they do Warhammer, Bolt Action, Oathmark. There's so many of these games. I mean, they're all parochial and very specialist in some ways, but they're all the same people, and that will admit that they actually have done or do this. I've had absolutely no issue with getting the 5 members that I'll need to set a SIG up, just from my own personal people I know. We've got a member at West Riding here, my own little branch, and we've got, I think, if everybody rocks up, we might have 12 people in the room. We've got 4 who make these kind of figures or models. Might not talk about it much, but they do.
Okay. So a quick question that comes from what you've said. You talked about 28mm. Is there a scale?
Absolutely not. No.
Right.
We don't work in wargaming. It tends to be scales are set by the manufacturers, frankly. And what's called heroic 28mm, sorry, I'm getting into Jamie's bit here a little bit, I think, as a manufacturer, but is the most popular these days. And that is what's widely used for anything where a person represents a person. But we can regularly go down to 15mm, which is about a quarter of the height. And that's useful for things like Napoleonic battles, where you've got a lot of people, relatively large amounts of figures. You want to get them on a smaller space. If you want to do battles about tanks and nothing but, you might be down to 300 scale. If you want to get down into battleship type conflicts at sea, or spaceships, I guess, you can be down to 3000 scale.
Wow.
Which still makes an aircraft carrier about 3 inches long, a World War II aircraft carrier.
Okay.
It's an attempt to, because you can, when you actually go on a table to actually play a game, and there are a lot of war gamers who don't, like me, because I don't do much of that either. I just buy a lot of them. But you're trying to simulate scale. You can't represent on a tabletop real scale, because many type of ranged weaponry, like a rifle or a plasma rifle or an aircraft carrier or a battleship with 15-inch guns, in scale, they're shooting into more or less the next town if you match them to the scale of your model. So you're always cheating on scales. But that doesn't really matter. We don't care. It's the impression of what you can achieve that we're looking for. And unfortunately, there are a lot of proprietary brands who set their own target and their own standard. And that's the same as in scale modelling as well. Different people. We have 32nd and 35th scale for tanks, don't we? Why? But we do. 72nd, 76th for military vehicles. Again, they're very close and they conflict. But personally, I have no problem with using what we call these heroic 28mm scale figures and putting them next to some 48 scale vehicles. Frankly, don't bother me. It's some tall guys relative to the vehicles. It doesn't really matter. You're right in what you said. We try gaming side, whilst it has quite a lot of people who can be incredibly passionate and just as dedicated to the colour of lace on the 95th rifles in 1815 on their uniforms. We get just as many people who are into that in gaming as there are who know how many rivets there should be to the inch on a B-17. There are always passionate people who know a lot about the subject. And just like in what I call scale modelling, there's a lot of people, frankly, who it's good enough for me. And that again is where it's great that everybody can participate and do what they want.
Okay, so 28th roughly correlates, if James has got his maths right, about 156 scale?
Exactly, yeah. 156 is what they call that, yeah.
And Rubicon, Stroke Atelier or Tellery producing that scale?
They do, yeah. Both of those produce miniatures in that scale.
Okay.
Mainly aimed at the wargame world, but not necessarily, not 100%. And then you get, I would say that they're on the modelling side, getting towards gaming. But then you get the crossover where you'll get a company like Warlord Games who produce in 56mm as well. 28mm 56 scale.
Yep.
They produce a vast range of vehicles. And they cross over into the modelling side, because you often get gamers will want things that may not sell in the mainstream plastic hobby because they're made in different ways. A tank might only come in 6 pieces: pair of tracks, a hull, turret, gun, commander sticking out the top. That might be it. Especially these days with the high res digital print, you can get away with minimal parts. And they're just generally, they can be simpler, easier models. Because as you said in the intro, once you finished it and you're getting it on the table, somebody's going to pick it up and move it around. So fine aerials and little tiny wing mirrors and stuff may not be on a tank for wargaming purposes.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So obviously there is a crossover between what we have been talking about on the show for the last year or so and what you're talking about. You're looking at the same paints, you're looking at the same construction methods, basically. You're looking at the same materials for kits. You're looking at 3D printing. We're basically just talking about, as we actually said, a different form of the same hobby.
Another subject.
But for some reason, there's been this barrier or invisible barrier that's been between the two for some reason. But when you actually look at it in reality, there is no barrier whatsoever.
Not to me. They both work in different ways. In both actually innovate. There are certainly things I've seen in what I would call wargaming world that are innovative compared to scale world and really help. Some of the products that I've brought across that way are really good. An example is, just a quick example is, there are things called, I think the generic name for them is speed paints, that kind of thing, contrast paints, which in one coat will highlight and shadow and shade a colour. So you apply one coat on and it does the highs and lows all at that one coat. Is it fine art? Would it win a trophy at the Nationals? Probably not. But if all you need to do is get some white paint into the undercarriage bay of an F-18, then it's adequate for purpose for me. It takes one coat, give it 20 minutes, and I've got highlights and shadow from the plastic model. That isn't common yet to modelers, and every time I pull one out and people see it, they go, "Oh, that's good." The pens that people have started using, the modelling paint pens, I know a number of manufacturers do them, but those originally started, as far as I can see anyway, in the figure world.
Okay. So Jamie, for the day job, works for a company that most of us will have obviously heard of, Ammo by Mick Jimenez. And obviously they have the Atom range and the Ionic range, and there's other things in the pipeline which sounds like it's absolutely ideal for this side of the hobby, as well as for, I'll say, mainstream, without wanting to get shouted at. But again, it's a crossover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys were talking about how wargaming can kind of be a segue into traditional modeling.
Yeah.
I've only ever painted 2 traditional kits in my life, which were Tamiya 148, because the tanks weren't available in 156. So as Paul was mentioning, it was good enough for me to have a slightly bigger tank than what my opponent was having, just to have that option on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed working with the Tamiya 148. A little bit more complicated than most wargaming kits, but you can see how someone could catch the bug and stick with it.
That's an interesting crossover that you've actually mentioned, and I hadn't actually associated that side that you're talking about with the wargaming. So is this commonplace for people to actually build, I'll say, out of scale? Paul's mentioned it obviously already from his side, but is it commonplace for different people when they're actually using in battle, in inverted commas?
So in bolt action specifically, because that's a game that I used to play a lot of.
Okay.
There is a bit of a debate because the figures are heroically scaled 28mm. Some figures look better with 156 vehicles, and some figures look better with 148. And it has been kind of a classic argument where some people prefer one scale or the other. And one company, at least that I know of, actually makes 150th, which is somewhere in the middle as a compromise. And it kind of comes down to personal taste. And I have friends who are more painters who prefer the 148th, and ones who are more about getting a lot of stuff on the table quickly, who like the really simple 156 resin kits. Like Paul said, that are just 2 pieces of track, a body and a turret, because you can assemble them in no time at all.
Just to throw in, forgive me, Jamie, I'm not trying to tread on your toes, but for those who may not know, bolt action is a World War II, I would say, squad stroke, platoon, company level game, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a great game for firefighters.
Fantastic game.
Yeah. Can I just say, would you say there's then the spin-off into larger bust? And so I've seen huge Space Marine figures as well.
Yeah.
As well. Now, no one's using that for tabletop gaming. That then morphs into a real painting side of things, doesn't it? But obviously the designs are heavily influenced by the tabletop gaming. So it's like each. But then I've seen armored vehicles in tabletop gaming, like full-on fantasy, and you can see influences in those when they were designed. It's like, well, that's clearly sort of a First World War tank crossed over with something else, and it might be blue in colour. So there's so much crossover, but it's surprising that there's not up until now an organised group, especially within the IPMS, for this stuff.
Now, and the danger is it could be very broad if we're not careful, and it's not intended to be a gaming group. It's not intended to be subversive. It's just intended to be. It hasn't. It'll form itself, or it won't.
I'd quite happily join it, but not from the gaming side. Probably more from the painting side, because I every now and again go on a bit of a figure painting journey and top up my skills there. And one of the chaps in my club, he recently got into spraying cars. The problem was that he can't spray in the winter. So he then switches and has been painting fantasy figures and all of those sort of things. So it's a great switch if you do want to try something. And at the end of the day, I suppose gaming miniatures, like you say, because of the relatively standard scale of them, you can get, with speed paints, you can get a result fairly quickly to just try and not be. There's nothing worse than trying a model or a technique for the first time and it being an absolute disaster. It's better if you do have a relatively relatively equal to your skill level result, where you can say, right, well, next time I do it, I'll probably do that a little bit better. Do you know what I mean?
Totally agree. I think in that respect, it's exactly like normal conventional modeling, whatever we're going to call it. Yeah, every time something rolls off the bench, it'll be better than the previous one in some way.
Yeah, but do you think that the base kits of a Wargaming miniatures set, let's face it, if you going back to old frog kits or certain kits that certain manufacturers are putting out in the middle of supermarkets, I think there's a de Havilland something or other that's out at the moment that is, countable in dog years how old the kit is. And I still maintain, if that was your child's, or you are an adult with a disposable income that fancies having a go at this hobby, if that's your first experience picking up one of them real old tooled kits, you're going to go, that's not great. Whereas if you picked up, say, the Wargaming magazine that has a sprue of figures on the front of it, and you brought that home, they are probably going to be better molded than a really, really old, repopped 50 times and 50 years old tooling of a model kit. So I think your first experience has to be good and positive from the off, so that you get a result that's not the best you're ever going to do because you're just starting, but it's probably better than what you would achieve out of a conventional.
Drags you on to do it again.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's worth talking about doing your first kit as well and not being disheartened. Like Games Workshop and the Warhammer scene are very good at that, because you can go into any Games Workshop and they have models there that are on sprue ready for you to assemble, and they will show you the techniques you need to get a basic standard. So even if you've never painted a model before, you walk into a Games Workshop and there's one everywhere. They're called Warhammer stores now, and you can paint a Space Marine, or they have a miniature of the month, which is like a specific little sprue with one figure on. For you assemble it in store with their stuff, so it doesn't cost you anything. It's completely free, and they'll show you how to apply a base coat, apply a wash, try out a speed paint, and they're very enthusiastic. And your result might not be award-winning or anything like that, but you'll have you'll feel like you want to learn more straight away.
I suppose the key is, if you enjoy that first experience, then you want to do it again, don't you?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, as with this hobby, if you're enjoying it, then you're doing it right. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you're building, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of what you're building for you. And if that first experience is positive, then you're in, aren't you? You're hooked.
And playing that one to what Brownie said at the beginning, it's about getting hold of people to try something like this. And Games Workshop on one Saturday will achieve more first-time builders and painters than every make and take run by an IPMS branch or any other club all over the country in a year, because they'll get through.
Unless it's at Scale Model World and they're building Gundams.
But even then, no disrespect back to the guys doing it, but that will still be only 20 or 30 people. A Warhammer stock can have 10 through in a day, and they've got 300, 400 stores.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that run up to Christmas, they're pushing product. Little Jimmy makes his model, paints it, and quite often mum or dad walks out with a box under their arm.
Yeah. There's a hardware store chain near me that have now started stocking the full paints and a healthy selection of boxed sets to choose from.
Yeah.
It is spreading in that regard. You see in convenience stores now that will have that black shelf or black shelving unit of the Warhammer paint and a selection of the paintbrushes and the kits. And I think that's very good on Games Workshop's point of view, that their outreach program is pretty good and it's very fluid and flexible, and they'll take on new customers and be like, just try us, see how you feel. If it doesn't work, we'll take the stock back, whatever it is. And that is going to get a lot of people into it. I mean, I'm not in terms of Games Workshop, I don't buy it for the miniatures, but I'm absolutely fascinated by the paint range, and I know it's moved from Citadel paints to what they're calling Warhammer colours. But I find those paints really fascinating. They're obviously very viscous because they're designed for miniature painters who aren't going to be looking for awards. But I think it's a fascinating alternative. And like I was telling Brownie before we came on, I don't know if you got to see it, Paul, but the stand that the pod had at Bolton, I displayed a platoon of Japanese soldiers there, 100% painted in what was then Citadel paints, just to prove that you can do it.
Well, I'd have been further down the hall with my Space Marines on the table. Which were painted with enamels in those days, because that's what we had. But yeah, the market penetration these guys are getting is awesome. And the same with Gundams. I'm seeing those on the high street. And that's why, if as a hobby we say we're not interested in those subjects, we're cutting our own face off, despite our nose off to spite our face. Sorry.
You made a really good point though, Paul. When you walk into a Games Workshop or Warhammer, the shops as they are now, the people, you cannot replace the enthusiasm of the people sat there putting on a demonstration free of charge. It's part of the experience. And that is why there is such, or I say that's why, but that is a big part of why the people, I mean, I've witnessed it with my boys who walked in there. They were amazed at what they were being shown in front of them, and it was genuine. There was no ulterior motive. Obviously, people would typically buy stuff if you're there with your mum and dad and whatever else, but you don't have to. It's just, sometimes it's an experience to go and see how it's done. And there's no replacement for that enthusiasm.
And you see it in ordinary game shops as well nowadays. What we used to call in fact still do, the friendly local game shop. There isn't a badged Warhammer store, but probably sells some of their gear. But a lot of those now will have a community around them of people who go in and play games in the shop. They'll make models in the shop.
Yeah.
And that's community stuff, which frankly we've lost in the what I would call normal scale world, where frankly we've lost all the shops more or less.
Yeah, I was just saying to the guys before our segment here, I've just got back from the Isle of Wight and I went to four different model shops on the island, but also went to a card game shop. And even in that card game shop, there was miniatures for tabletop gaming. It's another stream, it's another outlet. And I can tell you something, that place was absolutely rammed. Every single table full with obviously card gamers from trading card games and whatever else, from Pokemon to Gundam card game, which me and Jamie spoke briefly about before we started recording as well, but it was rammed. And to have figures as another stream, it keeps the bricks and mortars going, hopefully as long as they can, with all the diversity that the shops have to stock now.
So diversification basically is the key for survival, unfortunately, in some ways. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to start looking at those avenues to actually survive as a bricks and mortar shop.
Yeah. But then they're pulling, I think, obviously, with having Jamie on as well, there's the real social media side of it. It seems to me that the gaming community or the miniature fantasy painting community is a bit more tuned in to the more younger based social media side of things, whereas most modelers that are probably doing most conventional IPMS style modelers that are doing what we're doing, we're probably on Facebook, and that's probably about it. Most gaming people or gaming or fantasy painters are very heavily into the Instagram thing. They're very heavily into the TikTok thing as well, which is a younger demographic of social media. And for example, on YouTube as well, Squidmar have launched this competition, this 5-part competition, Miniature Masters. The first episode went out a month ago and it's had just under 500,000 views. That's pretty good, isn't it, for an independent production showcasing painting miniatures, and
and that's on YouTube.
And a lot of the painters that are on there, I don't want to sound ageist, they are a lot younger. So they are the flag bearers for this hobby. They are the demographic for this hobby. Now, that doesn't mean to say that older gentlemen or older builders can't get into this, or older women, in fact, but just talking about the demographic and where that's being pushed compared to our conventional sort of modeling, it's just a different dynamic. But I think if you can find a way to bring the two closer together, i.e. with what Paul's doing, then it's got to be onto a winner. Because I know for a fact, my son's not doing gaming miniatures, he's into, so like the comic book miniatures. So these blockies kits that are out at the moment, we went to see the Spider-Man film recently, and of course they've got the new Spider-Man out in blockies form. He bought it and built it, and something must have stuck from the previous Gundams that he's built, because he's now, every one of these blockies that he builds straight away is not standard. It gets weathered, and he's now started carving out sections from the body so that it can be posed better. So the customization now bug is starting to, or the modeling part of it seems to be now kicking in every time. He wants a matte finish on it. He wants to line some of the panel lines on it. He wants to enhance it. And I think the next step is probably going to be that these things are going to be on display bases, which means diorama building.
Fantastic.
Which you can do with tabletop gaming. Again, that all of that stuff is there, isn't it? Building landscape, building ruins or fantasy landscapes or whatever.
Yeah. Agreed. Just to bring Jamie back into the conversation for a sec, we've obviously talked about the gaming side of it. What does an actual game involve? What is actually required to actually have a game, as it were? Because I'm guessing you can't actually play it on your own.
Actually, there are quite a few solo games out now that have a
Okay.
There are
kind of a like card-based system, or almost, I want to say AI, but it's not AI. It's like the figures move independently based on what's around them.
Yeah.
But mostly it involves two or more people. You need a gaming surface of different sizes based on the game you're playing or the scale you're playing. Mm-hmm. And then you both have your force and you agree on a rule set. And that's effectively it. You can play just with your mate for fun, casually, but there are tournaments which are more competitive, where you might play 4 or 5 games in a day, a couple of days of gaming, and someone gets like a trophy for coming first, someone gets best sportsman, but somebody also gets best painted. So the modeling side even comes into competitive play as well. And yeah, it really depends on what game you're playing as to how much you need, because some games you might only have 4 or 5 figures each. Mm-hmm. And then other games, as Paul mentions, you might have battalions of Napoleonic figures filling up an entire room almost for your gaming surface.
Right, okay. Now, for listeners who are discovering Hollow Crown Miniatures for the first time, what was the moment that convinced you and Florian that it was time to create your own company rather than continue working independently?
Yeah, so me and Florian both have our own independent gaming companies. It's called Infamous JT, which is a terrible name, and he has Varus Minatures.
Okay.
Well, basically, what Dan mentioned earlier about social media, we met through Facebook and Instagram and like each other's work so long ago I can't even remember. And he's in Germany actually, so that's another thing I think is great about the hobby, how you meet people from around the world.
Right.
And I know nothing about 3D printing. All the stuff I've released in the past has been physical cast releases, and Florian knows a lot about 3D printing, and he digitally sculpts as well, and he wanted to release something physical, so we thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of share our skills. Mm-hmm. And also in the past we've helped each other out by sharing ideas, or Florian helped me fulfill a Kickstarter in the past with shipping to Europe, and we've had this idea to make something together for a long time, and the right topic came along, and then Hollow Crown Miniatures happened, and yeah, it's exciting.
Okay, so Hollow Crown's launched the Cruciform Order of St. George. Why did you choose the Trench Crusade universe as the first project?
Trench Crusade, for people who don't know, is kind of a grim dark game, which means it has a very specific aesthetic, which is dark, quite monochrome, quite, I don't want to say sad, but very emotional. Mm-hmm. And Trench Crusade specifically combines World War One with medieval history and the occult, and it's a real kind of cool sandbox where so much stuff, you can come up with so many ideas for your own topics within that universe. But the guys who make the game, Factory Fortress Inc., actually had a open license, which meant if you made something that fitted into their universe and it was original, you could apply for a community license where they give it a stamp that says these miniatures are compatible with our game. So we were really gripped by the kind of the lore and the artwork coming out with Trench Crusade. We really liked the game system because it's written by the guy who wrote Mordheim for Games Workshop. Mm-hmm. which is a game we played when we were younger, and it's a skirmish game, so you don't need minifigures. And yeah, we thought, what a cool universe. It would be awesome to make something in that. And Florian pointed out this really cool observation that a World War I British Brodie helmet kind of looks like a kettle helm from the medieval period. And then we came up with the idea of, what if the Brodie helmet had chainmail underneath? And when it just kind of happened organically that we had this idea for an English faction in their game.
Okay. And how many different figures have you actually got in the range at the moment then?
I've lost count. Oh, I think about 28 so far. We've got some that haven't been released yet or shown, but I think there's about 28 in the English faction, varying from like little dogs in gas masks up to we've got a giant who's massive and carries a big anti-tank rifle.
Okay, and Paul mentioned earlier about 28 millimeter. Is that the same scale that you're actually working in?
No, scales are a bit of a pain in Wargaming and so varied. Everyone makes up their own mind. I would describe it as 32 millimeter scale heroic, which means they're bigger than 28 mil, but they are a little bit skinnier than 28 mil figures because the extra height gives you space to make more realistic proportions. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And that makes for a painter, I think it makes them a little bit more enjoyable because they're a little bit more natural looking, and you can make a bit more kind of realistic posing than you can with some of the older 28 mil figures.
Okay, and the examples you've got on your website, which we'll come to a little later, is that using atom paints and the new Ionic series?
Almost all of the miniatures are painted with Ionic Smart Colors, which is the kind of line we've got at Ammo for Wargamers. So the paint is specifically formulated for the way that Wargamers paint. So it's more designed towards brush painting, although you can dilute it.
Okay.
And we worked with a guy called Ruben Torregrosa, who is the author of the Encyclopedia of Wargaming series, Ionic. He painted all our box art so that we could then make matching paint sets. So if you buy the paint set, you know that those are the paints that the artist used to paint the actual box that you're buying.
Gotcha.
And we also put in something I'm really passionate about is I really like working with enamels and oil paints, which is really starting to kind of become more and more popular within Wargaming because of people like Ruben making content showing how this enamel wash will change your life, and it's a lot easier to use than an acrylic wash on flat surfaces. And because of that, we released an enamel set as well and a oil paint set for making effects like streak and grime and accumulations of rust and things like that.
So there really is a crossover in the accessory paint ranges as well as the mainstream paint ranges as well then?
Yeah, I think like most Wargamers come into the hobby through Games Workshop like we were discussing earlier, so they're used to acrylics. But again, like Dan said, with social media, more and more Wargamers are finding enamel paints, oil paints, pigments, and I feel like that's fed into why Grimdark is growing as well, because Grimdark is a setting that really benefits from weathering effects and texture and all the sort of things that scale modelers are used to, but it's new to Wargamers. And it's definitely growing in popularity.
That leads perfectly, Jamie, on to my next question. You're saying that Grimdark is growing in popularity. Why do you think that is?
I don't want to bore you guys for hours, but Grimdark, in my opinion, started with a guy called John Blanche, who's this amazing artist at Games Workshop. He sadly passed away quite recently, but he defined Grimdark for me, and you can see that influence all through Warhammer. But I think Grimdark has grown as its own genre because there's less rules than there is with fantasy. Like an elf almost always has to look clean. Like you never imagine an elf in anything other than shining armor. You never imagine a dwarf in anything other than a chainmail coat that's been like well looked after. But with Grimdark, you can weather and experiment and come up with your own schemes. And it's very accessible because there's an element of Grimdark that is random in the way you apply the paints and blend them on the miniature, and it's a lot more fluid. And I think it feels fresh to people because of that kind of openness and the ability to choose what you like. And I think that a lot of people as well are seeing a Grimdark aesthetic a lot in movies, in video games. Like I really liked Hellboy growing up, and Hellboy has a Grimdark vibe to it because it's got religious iconography and historical stuff and then fantastical all blended in together. I think, the combination of that, there's almost like you're seeing Grimdark across loads of things at the same time, like comic books, video games, film, and all that together has created like a really cool aesthetic that people want to try out, basically.
Yeah, it's going to be very controversial to say in front of these guys, but I am a historian first and a modeler second. And my one big focus in history is medievalism, which isn't studying the medieval world in its own beauty and right, which absolutely we should, but studying how we continually recreate what we class as the medieval in the present world. And as part of that, just honestly, an interview with you would be such a good case study of that. And I think, do you think it's more broadly about, if we use medievalism as a catch-all term and grimdark being a part of that, do you think we're fascinated by things that appear medieval and trying to take them from their location in time and put them somewhere where they don't belong? Do you think that's what it is?
I definitely think that there's a strong element of that, because you see it in even the Hollow Crown logo was obviously inspired by a bascinet helm with a crown around it, and we've tried to make it look like a wood carving.
Yeah.
And a lot of other miniature brands like Meridian Miniatures, who makes really awesome models of crazy different themes. He actually makes models of the illustrations that monks used to put in manuscripts in the corner of pages, like a rabbit riding a sow and jousting against another rabbit. He makes things like that, which is so cool.
That's cool. That's really cool.
But yeah, the medievalism is definitely a part of Grimdark, and it's definitely inspired by that. And I think it's trying, at least with Trench Crusade, trying to take things that are at first two separate things like World War One and medieval warfare and merge them to create something that still feels believable. It doesn't feel like two ideas forced together.
Yeah. Before we let Shane come in with this question, obviously, just as my experience as a historian, this is something that happened historically during the First World War. People imagining themselves located in the medieval, like you hear accounts from some of the first battles on the Western Front where people said, we are the army of Henry V. And I don't know if you've ever read tales like you've got the Angels of Mons and you've got the myth of the bowman there. Really interesting things to draw on for things like the Hollow Crown and creating a mythos there of actually, no, we haven't left the medieval yet, and these things are still relevant to us. And like I say, that's not just for wargamers now. Back in 1914, 1915, people were having the exact same conversations.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting phenomenon because, like you say, I think it can be combined in new ways to create interesting new kind of settings and environments and miniatures, but there is a sense of the familiar in it because everybody has an idea of what a knight should look like, or a cultural identity around like an English longbowman at the Battle of Cressy. So when you make other events and other miniatures, you can draw upon that. I think it's quite creative and fun.
And all I'll say before I hand over to Shane is that there isn't a coincidence that a Brody helmet looks like a Kettle helmet or a German style helm looks like a Sallet helmet. That was very intentional at the time. Like I say, it's not weird to suddenly draw the correlation now. That was for deliberate effect.
I mean, just touching upon an interesting comment that Paul, you started with earlier on, and Jamie, I'd be interested to sort of get your take on it as well. Like Jamie, your figures, they blend that medieval religious imagery with that First World War trench warfare. That is an unusual combination. And Paul, you said about when you were a boy, it didn't really matter what was on the table, but how do you strike a balance between historical inspiration or reimagination fantasy without one overwhelming the other?
Yeah, I would say we have a secret weapon in Ari, who is the sculptor. It's called Ari Nielsen. When we set out to make the range, we wanted to make everything look like a combination of medieval and World War One, but have it look believable. So not two things forced together. The first thing that we kind of did was come up with a variant of the British World War One uniform, and where we could sneak medieval elements into that without it looking overpowering. And then for the different ranks and different units, they all have that same base uniform, but it's influenced by their role on the battlefield. So the sapper, for example, he's put extra pockets onto his uniform to hold all the kind of wire cutting devices, grenades and all things like that, and he's got improvised armor. Whereas our heavy shock troopers wear bascinet helms from like 14th century, 15th century. But their armor, even though it's a knightly armor, is inspired also by the armor that trench fighters war in like trench raids during World War One. And I think that keeps it kind of, one aspect doesn't overpower the other because we're not forcing two things together. We're looking for what was similar in World War One and what was similar in the medieval period, and how can we blend them together, if that makes sense. It's not taking just a random thing from each period and pushing it. It's, okay, knightly armor, that was one to protect people, so was the trench armor. How can we blend those two elements together to create something that looks like it could have existed and doesn't look too out of place? And I think there's three of us mainly who've been involved in the range. There's me and Florian, and then obviously the sculptor, Ari Nielsen. I think the three of us working together do quite a good job at that, because sometimes one of us will have an idea, especially me, and then the others will go, maybe that's a bit too far. It's a bit too fantastical, rein it in. And I think that's been really useful. And we worked with a great artist called Marco Caparone. He came after the figures were done, but he normally works for historical war games. And he drew some pictures of our work, painted them like traditional artwork. And I think that really helped make us keep in mind, how do we make it believable and not overpower one aspect with the other.
So you don't end up in a scenario like Paul did when he was a kid then?
I mean, I think every gamer does that at one point, because it would be cool to see if Roman legionnaires could face off against Space Marines.
If you went back to the 70s when I was around there, the biggest set of war game rules at the time was the ancient set. It was semi-official, everybody used it, and it literally went from 500 BC to the early medieval period. And literally, it was genuine, it had army lists, it was all that kind of stuff, but you were playing completely ridiculous armies against each other. But it, by every definition, there's an element of suspension of disbelief while you do this. It's just the same as reading a comic book, watching a film noir movie. You're going to suspend your disbelief for the period while you're playing it or watching it. And if the designers and the manufacturers do a great job, as Jamie's clearly doing there, the miniatures and the tech, the lore as it's called, which is the backstory, for want of a better term, ties it all together. I mean, in the what I'd call the static model world, the scale model world, whatever, how many people haven't gone and had a look at the what if sig at a show and gone, what's that? And then there's a whole ream of information in front of some aeroplane or tank or something about what this is and what it was made to do and who built it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That is a really good point.
It is completely just, there was a swing wing lightning variant at one time, was there? I'm never quite sure if that's true or not, but I've seen models of it, so it must be true. We have a massive modelling fixation on Luftwaffe 1946, stuff that never got off a drawing board, but people model it. Well, can you check if that's accurate? No. Does it matter? No. Did you enjoy building it? Yes.
Yeah.
Equals success.
Did you enjoy it? That's the key phrase there, isn't it?
Exactly. Did you use your skills, your modelling abilities, great or small? Did you do a good job of it? Did you enjoy it? Are you going to do another one? That's the kind of thing I'm always asking. And any model, we all make, those who make the static models, we make brilliant finishes, and some of us better than others, in capturing, say, a diorama of, I don't know, I'm going to pick on Dan, a B-17 on a certain base on a certain day. Absolutely fine. But what was on the other side of the aeroplane on the same day? We don't know. So there's an element of invention and creation in doing that. And it's...
Do you think there's more... there is more sort of artistic creation with painting miniatures with colours and stuff. But I do find it hard. I know when people will build a model of a military vehicle or whatever, and they'll say you're expressing yourself in the model. To a point, I think there's a lot more expression in the painting of figures and faces and a life form rather than a metal object. Do you know what I mean? I think there's a lot more expression there.
Truth there, yeah, and that I would say. But it doesn't make it better or worse. Both.
No, not at all. It's just a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Both are using our creative talents, skills, our eyes, our hands to create something.
Yeah, I want to make it look like that.
One may be 100% accurate miniature of something that is standing right in front of you. Something else could be something that has never existed, never will, and never could. Doesn't
matter.
It's there's still an element of it's pure creative art for me. Just how long you take it. People start with a clean piece of paper and do a brilliant drawing, ink it in.
Is there, Jamie, would you say there's much of the, I suppose we would call them, I don't like to say it, but I will say it, rivet counters. Is there much of that in the gaming or tabletop miniature painting community where someone could say they didn't look like that?
Yeah, there is. I think
there is.
I'm really guilty of it myself.
Don't look at mine if I paint any of them for the first time, will you?
So I think that in my experience in the gaming, there are people who like things to be, if it's historical gaming, historically accurate.
Yeah.
But even in the fictional universes, me and my friend will spend hours talking about what is the correct marking to put on a Space Marine shoulder during the 32nd millennium.
Yeah.
At this company in this battle. And there is no right answer because no one's ever written that down and it's an invented universe. But it's part of the fun for some of us is to try and figure that out.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of conventional modelers trying this stuff for the first time. It doesn't matter, does it? You can just do what you want to do. If you've got 4 colours,
absolutely
4 paint colours, and you go, well, I'm going to try blending some different paint colours to see if I can come up with something else that doesn't look like mud.
Absolutely. And the game designers encourage you to do that. So in popular games like Trench Crusade, they deliberately leave space for you to make up your own things that fit into that universe. So if you want to paint a Trench Crusade guy, someone painted one of our models up. They noticed that because we've obviously gone for a St. George theme with a red cross.
Yeah.
They painted it up in the colours of Cornwall because they wanted to paint black and white. Or like in I'm a 40k, one of my friends wanted to paint something orange. So he made up a whole Space Marine chapter who will wear orange.
Brilliant. Am I right in thinking I've seen some of them, that American football style players? I saw a gaming set that they're American football. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's American football style game, but played by fantasy races versus humans versus skeletons or whatever. Yeah, and it can introduce some of those rules that sometimes you wish American football would have in it. Like the referee brings out a chainsaw, and if you argue with him, get your legs off. Those kind of things can be fun. At the end of the day, the game should be fun. As Jamie rightly said,
yeah,
there are some people who take it to a tournament level. They will turn out and they'll play 3 or 4 games on a Saturday for a trophy. There are people who'll turn out at a scale model show, having spent a year building a model to win a trophy. But there's equally a hell of a lot of people who will turn out to meet with a mate on an evening with a couple of beers, possibly organised or possibly on the kitchen table, and they'll have a game and have a bit of fun.
And there's also probably just the painting, the people that just...
Absolutely.
And that would probably be me, if I'm totally honest with you. I certainly don't need another side hobby from the hobby of the hobby, which is tabletop gaming. But the painting side of things, just painting the miniatures really does appeal to me because I paint figures anyway. So it's natural.
And here's a chance to freeform it and do what the hell you like.
Try something other than olive drab and khaki.
As you said, you could buy a whole heap of Jamies and create the Norfolk Regiment or something.
As soon as I saw those, I thought they're just brilliant. They're great. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
I've got Warhammer figures that are painted in quasi-British military trend behind them.
Yeah.
Couldn't use them in a Games Workshop official tournament.
No.
It's still my blaming figures and they're fine.
You had fun doing them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say as well, for people who are just painters and not interested in gaming, the kind of war games painting community is so supportive of each other on things like Instagram. Like I mentioned earlier, I met Florian through the hobby so long ago, I can't even remember how or why or what. But people just comment on each other's things like, oh, I really like how you did that. Can you give me a tip? Or, oh, I saw you did this. Maybe you want to try it this way another time. But it's never negative. It's always positive. I don't want to say criticism because that's the wrong word, but people share ideas.
Yeah.
In a really nice way. And quite often I've asked a comment on Instagram and someone sent me a little reel or a clip of them, how they applied that effect. So then I can try it out. And it's a very social hobby, even though you would think that without the gaming side, it would be less sociable. it's still sociable even if you're just painting.
Yeah, that's good to know.
And a bit like conventional modelling, again, the actual collecting and doing part of it in the background probably outweighs any amount of time of staring at somebody across a table by a factor of 100 to 1.
Easily. I like to collect miniatures and pretend I'm going to play at some point.
Oh, cool.
It very rarely happens.
It's like us buying a model kit and intending on building it. It never happens. So you're not on your own there.
Yeah, I think I got half of the US 8th Air Force in my model stash, but one day I'll get there.
Oh, you never buy a model that you're not going to build, do you? Or a set of figures you're not going to use. But my God.
Got a plan for every single one of them. Every single one.
I'm going to need to live till I'm 500 before I even get close. As you say, that I'm doing both, remember, because I'm on the staff. I've got feet in both camps.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It's an interesting.
It's a new world, and I think I think we've commented a couple of times. If we're not careful, this is going to be the future, and it's going to go by us rather than be part of us. So we want to be incorporating to it. We want people to get involved in it.
Absolutely.
And the answer to what you said about your lad starting to already chop them about a bit and
that is happening. Yeah,
and do stuff. That is real modelling. Nobody could argue that is not quotes unquotes real modelling, whatever the hell that is anyway.
well, that's his mind. It's the creativity part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. And you'll tend to find those sort of people will do more of that sort of thing than somebody maybe who just paints. You do get some excellent figure painters, but all they'll do is paint busts, pre-built figures, and they won't even think of putting them in a diorama or chopping them about a bit or changing them in some way. They stick to what they're given, and all they do is paint it, just the same as every other hobby. As I say, for me, there is so much read across here. When I hear Jamie talking with the passion he does about his business there, it's exactly like in the scale world here, and somebody like John Adams or people like that talking about what they do in that sort of area. It's a wonderful little world. And there's a hell of a lot of what I still call garage style people in gaming, in those sort of miniatures and statics, because it's easier to get into for a manufacturer.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, especially kind of with the rise of 3D printing. I'm a bit of a Luddite and I know very little about it, but there's a lot of miniatures and ranges out there that wouldn't be possible without it because they wouldn't have the demand for a casting run or the customer base for a plastic kit. So you get weird and wonderful kind of very creative miniatures that exist because the technology is available now and because it is such a open community to new ideas and new miniatures.
Yeah. Going on that, Jamie, do you design your miniatures with gamers, painters, collectors, or like competition modelers that would put them into comps? Or do you try and satisfy all your customers equally?
It's a bit of a joke that you can never satisfy all gamers because everyone has a different opinion on what weapons are the best to give your miniatures, what is the coolest way to design your miniature, what is the correct scale.
Yeah.
But so Ari Nielsen, the sculptor that we're working with, he's very talented. So we knew that anything we released, people would enjoy painting. But when we started the range, I did look at the rules of the game to make sure that the miniatures we're using and the miniatures that we designed would be miniatures that people could actually game with. Because the worst thing you could do is release 30 miniatures, but you can't actually fit them into any rule set or onto any tabletop.
Yeah.
In terms of competition painting, there's so many diverse competitions in Wargaming in terms of painting. Like you have competitions that are limited to one kind of universal model game. Like you have Golden Demon, which is just Games Workshop products. So we didn't really have competition painting in mind, but my friend Craig, he took them to a Duncan Rhodes contest and he won a medal, which was really, really cool to see. And he won recently with his whole collection at the Fen Model Show, which is obviously crossing over into scale modeling as well.
Yeah.
And so there is hopefully we inspire some competition painters, but they weren't kind of the target audience. The target audience, I guess, was just people who want to enjoy painting and occasionally have a game, because we really haven't catered the miniature designs to the most competitive weapons. We've gone for what looks coolest, because that can be an aspect in wargaming. Sometimes is certain equipment is so overpowered in a game or so valuable in a game that can influence design, but we really did just go for what looks the coolest and what fits with our theme.
Power gaming, it's called. I used to know it as.
We call it beardy around here. You're being beardy if you've gone a little bit overpowered.
Yeah.
But as someone with a beard, I resent that. So
yeah, people who take the rules and again, if you watch scale model shows, you will see people who take a note of how many entries were in which category, and then will enter that category that only had 2 entries next year so that they can win a trophy.
Oh God.
Yeah, I've not. But to be honest, over the last say 10 years, I've noticed that there's more people entering the category with Games Workshop figures, other types of sci-fi fantasy figures in the competition. And last year, when I was looking, there was some absolute stonkers, and it's just grown, and it's grown massively because like the hobby's shifting. It's not just tanks, planes, boats, and there's other people now branching out into other avenues, and you can see where it's going, which I think is ace.
If you took we mentioned Golden Demon there, which is it's a tournament organised specifically by Games Workshop, and as they're a bit want to do, they see it as their own hobby. So if you're going to enter their tournament and their painting competition, you're going to use their equipment and their figures and miniatures. But the winner of one of I used to go to those a few years ago, and they're in Birmingham, and they were bloody awesome. And if you took some of the winners of those and stuck them in Telford, then the judges would have their work cut out to work out what the hell wins.
yeah, there's actually a scale modeler who is so influential in Wargaming called Phil Stis.
Yeah, we know Phil.
He's a member of an IPMS because I saw him down at the show in Bovington Tank Museum last year. But he's one of the guys I think who brought weathering into Warhammer when he was at Forge World, because he painted Warhammer 40k tanks with traditional scale modeling kind of aesthetics. So he's got the tanks with a whitewash, he's used modulation. And while he was at Forge World, they did a book that actually showed how to use oil paints and washes, enamel washes and pigments. And that was really revolutionary because traditionally they've only ever published stuff about acrylics. And I think Phil, I don't know if he's more well known in scale modeling or more well known in wargaming, but it's really cool because he's a perfect example of someone who is like Paul, has his foot in both camps.
Except he's very good.
He is amazing.
Over the years, I've shaken his hands a few times when he's won trophies and things. Yeah, in scale modelling. Yeah, he's an awesome modeller. And as you say, it highlights people who sit in all camps. And frankly, you just want to break their fingers, don't you? But that's...
Especially when they're that talented. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I went to the Fen model show, and that really opened my eyes as a sort of conventional scale modeler. When I went there and saw some of the painting, my God, when you walk in there, there's probably 4 rows of tables and you think, is that it? But when you realize how many miniatures are actually there and the amount of time you spend looking, and then you go around again and you notice things that you haven't seen and the painting techniques and stuff, and there's workshops there as well, which is absolutely brilliant. So I have a question for both Paul and Jamie, and if you could both answer it in your own way. I would estimate that there are many modelers listening to this who have never painted a game in miniature, which is one of the reasons why we've got you on, because that's what we like to do on this podcast, is spread the net. What would you say to convince someone who would normally build something like an aircraft, armor, ship, or something like that? What would you say to them to get them to give something like a grimdark figure a try?
Buy from Hollow Crown to start with.
Go on, Jamie, do the sales pitch.
Yeah, that would be nice. It's a good question. I don't know if Paul wants to go first or...
I'll have a crack. The first thing I'd say is, when you say there's quite a lot of conventional modelers who've never tried this, as my own experience has been of chatting to people about this in the last, 2 years or so, there's quite a lot who have, but they don't bring them to the club meetings, they don't bring them to the shows. So first of all...
Why is that? Why? Are they keeping it a secret, or they just...
Yeah, a little bit. I think we actually had this conversation when we met a while ago, Dan, that when you talk to somebody new, say at work...
Yep, I did, yep.
10 years ago, you didn't tell them, I make model kits or whatever. Because they go, oh, what a bit like Airfix, or whatever. The brands are available. And they kept it under their hat. And I think that's almost what I want to do this for, is just to try and say there's no stigma to this. There's no downside to it. Whether you build... Like I say, my own brand, we've actually gained a member for our local branch because he does Warhammer stuff. And he comes to the same pub, and it was like, why don't you have a talk with these guys? And he went, and then he brought some models along, and we went, they're fucking brilliant. They're amazing. He's an amazing little figure painter. And everybody went, that's really good. And now he's still there. So I think that's the first thing. I think there's a lot of people who are there who are a bit undercover, and a lot of people who are doing it with the kids, as we've mentioned on here. It's coming through them. So, but I think it's also, if somebody who genuinely has never tried it, it can be a palate cleanser. Just get hold of 10 Space Marines, grimdark figures, whatever it may be, and just have a go. Nobody's going to judge on it. Give it a try, and you never know, you might like it. And if you don't, then don't do it again.
I suppose the other thing is most of what you need, you've probably already got on your bench, apart from the paints. You've got your glue, you've got cutters, you've got sanders. You haven't got to spend that much to give it a go, have you?
I mean, when I started in the 70s, I just used my home rolling animals the same as I did on my Airfix kits. Sometimes might still do that. If I've got a grey primer, I mean, a lot of gaming scale figures and whatever are primed before you start painting them. Guess what? Whatever grey primer I've got around the house is what I use. There's a lot of brandism out there, but you don't have to use X's primer on X's models. It's just, you're absolutely right. 90% of what you would need to paint a 28 scale, heroic scale, or a 32 millimeter one, a model will have that already. You can probably make a good fist of it with what they've got.
So, Jamie, do you offer just one figure to buy, or are they set?
We actually do a free figure. We do a figure that people can take absolutely free. They just need to 3D print it. So if they've got a friend with a 3D printer, and then the rest of the range is sold in packs of free figures, because I come from like playing Warhammer. When I was a kid, they sold metal miniatures in packs of free, and that stuck with me, like growing up.
Jamie, can I just ask, what do your figures come out? Are they in metal, or are they in resin, or are they 3D, or are they just STLs?
People can buy just the STLs if they want to, but we also cast them in resin. They're cast in Birmingham by a company called CMA. And we went for resin over metal, because a lot of my stuff in the past has been cast in metal, but resin is given kind of a crisper detail with these figures, because they are a little bit more, because they've been digitally sculpted, they're a bit more defined, so they needed that little extra kind of panache. I don't know what the word is, but I really like them in resin. And
there's another crossover, because CMA also cast resin bits for conventional modelers.
Yeah, scale modeling companies. I went and visited them recently, and they had kit form services, the really large scale. Yeah. I was looking at some of them when I was there recently. I believe they also do stuff for scale trains even as well.
Yeah, often a lot of bleed across there. That's for me, that's a bleed across too far once you go into trains, but I try and avoid that one. But that's the principle. A lot of these guys are the same. Some of the sculptors are the same in some areas as well.
Yeah, the first range I ever released is actually a historical range. Yeah. Because I did a 28mm scale Warsaw Uprising in Polish.
Wow.
Because I really wanted the armoured car and nobody made one.
Nice.
I got somebody to make one, and then we cast up a couple of hundred.
Amazing. Because you could.
Yeah. Taking that obsession a bit too far.
Did you ever use the army in action then?
No, I plan to one day. Got them sculpted 10 years ago, and they might see service one day.
See, we're all the same.
It's another similarity with scale modelers.
Absolutely.
Jamie, whereabouts can people find your information online?
Yeah, so we're holocrownminiatures.com, and obviously we're on like Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, so there's links on the website. Fantastic. Okay, and Paul, for people that are interested in the upcoming SIG that you're going to be running, how do people get in contact with you?
Right now, it would be through my other IPMS role, which is currently is running the Decal Bank, as we call it, so just go to the IPMS website and you will find the list of all the committee members there. And I operate a thing called the Decal Bank, which is a whole another subject for another day, maybe. And they can contact me through that. It's just decalbank@ipmsuk.org.
Brilliant. Well, Jamie, Paul, thank you both very much for coming onto the show. It's been absolutely fascinating. I, for one, have absolutely learnt a hell of a lot during the conversation, but I think what today has shown is that historical wargaming, fantasy, grimdark and traditional scale modelling have far more in common than we sometimes realise. More importantly, if wargaming and fantasy miniatures are helping to bring younger people into painting and modelling, then that has to be good news for the future of the hobby. Hopefully, we've also tempted a few benchmates to look at this side of modelling with fresh eyes, although we accept absolutely no responsibility if you now discover you need an entirely new stash. I think the conversation has demonstrated there's no longer a barrier between tabletop gaming and scale modelling. It's all one hobby, and I think it's fair to say that from now on, we should all refer to it as just another branch of the same hobby. There's clearly much more to talk about, so the invitation is definitely there for you both to come back on again in the future to continue the conversation. But for those that are interested in what Jamie's been talking about from Hollow Crown, Jamie is going to be on our stand at Telford, and he's also going to be demonstrating some of the ammo products that can be used in the hobby, whichever genre you're actually building. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to seeing you again in the near future.
Thank you, Paul.
It's a lot, mate.
Cheers, guys.
Right.
And Jamie, I look forward to meeting you in November then.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Just don't judge my painting too harshly.
As long as you enjoy the hobby, it doesn't matter the quality or the quantity. It's just as long as you're enjoying it.
I must admit, I'm stressing out already because I'm going to have Jacob with me. And I just already know what's going to happen. I saw it firsthand.
Shane's bank balance is going to take an absolute hit, like the stock exchange from 1929.
Gundams will be out the window. It'll be the miniatures next. You watch.
Are you looking for top quality paints for your next project? Then look no further than the Scale Modeler Supply. Hi, I'm Scott, and as a passionate modeler myself, I've spent years creating the SMS product range, designing them specifically with a scale modeler in mind. We've worked extensively to develop our acrylic lacquer paint range to not only be airbrush ready straight out of the bottle, but also to be very easy to use so that anyone of any skill level can create professional results with minimal effort. Just give the bottle a good shake, pour into your airbrush and spray at 15 psi. So dive into your next project with confidence, knowing that you're backed by one of the finest hobby paints on the market. Head over to our website scalemodeler.com.au to check out our full range and to find your closest retailer.
Head over to modelpodcast.com and explore the best modelling podcasts available today. A worldwide podcast hub curated by Stuart Clark from the Scale Model Podcast. Coming up in episode 37, we'll be joined by Malcolm and James from Just Making Conversation for a special joint episode which includes a major announcement.
Well, that's the end of the episode. Thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully you found the crossover discussion we've had with Paul and Jamie as fascinating as we did. So, from Shane.
Take care, Benchmates.
From Boulders.
Here are all Benchmates.
From Dan.
Dear Benchmates, just remember, if you're enjoying your build, then you're doing it right.
And from Nevs.
Bye chaps, see you in the next episode.
And from myself, remember, the next episode is going to be a very special collaborative with the Just Making Conversation guys of Malcolm Childs and James Skiffins with a major announcement. And with that, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye for now.
Static model, and let's face it, who hasn't built a model and gone meow and taken it for a test flight, or built a tank and gone fire in secret without anybody else knowing?
or built an Earthix 600 scale and played with it in the bathtub.
Oh, what a shame I didn't actually hit pause for the recording, because this is all going at the end of the show.
Hold on. In my defence, I was like 8-9 years of age when I was doing this. I was replicating the Battle of the Denmark strength of Bismarck.